Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is Rikudo Senin Reincarnation and inherits Sage Power and Eyes Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto's head gave a powerful throb as he climbed to his unsteady feet with shaking legs. He rubbed gingerly at the pain lancing his temples. What? The memory rushed to the forefront of his mind in a mixed jumble of images and sounds. He remembered a grass shinobi, a rather ugly 20-something girl with long black hair and an even longer tongue. He remembered a snake, a monstrous colossus that could have swallowed the Hokage Tower whole, and broken trees with thick mossy trunks. He remembered stopping that snake with his bare hands and a pair of kunai, and Sasuke and Sakura staring, shocked, awed, afraid, rooted to their spots. He remembered being lifted into the air by that freaky tongue, held in a grip as strong as steel that would not drop him no matter how hard he struggled. He remembered a word, Kiba. The snake freak had recognized him. What came next was even more of a blur. He remembered 5 fingers alight with purple fire, his shirt being yanked up, the wind leaving his lungs. He remembered pain, terrible pain, and a horrifying weakness, his vision going dark, his arms too feeble to lift, his eyes too heavy to stay open, and the cold, bone-numbing fear of encroaching death. Then nothing. His head hurt. Pain, that meant he had to be alive, right? He groaned softly. He scrunched his face up and shook his head. What did that snake freak do to me? He reached down and pinched the space between his left thumb and forefinger, then rolled the captured flesh, an old remedy for headaches the old man had taught him. He opened his eyes, blinking rapidly, and looked around. First things first, finding out his location. Where? A vast expanse of pure white snow stretched out before him for miles around, and there was no end in sight, no mountains in the distance, no hazy outline on the horizon, or even a horizon to begin with. There was no clear place where earth met sky, only a blurred transition from white snow to grey clouds. Several trees littered the rolling slopes, reaching up towards the sky and barren but for small white flowers that bloomed timidly. Tiny flakes as soft as silk landed on his skin, melting and dribbling down his face and neck. He reached out and caught petite white fuzz in his palm. It was snowing, he realized, and when the clouds shifted enough to reveal a quick ray of sun, the thousands of tiny snowflakes shimmered beautifully. He knew he should be freezing, his jumpsuit was not designed for anything colder than mid-autumn. The snow around him should have been radiating coldness or sucking the heat from his very skin. But he didn't feel cold. In fact, he was oddly comfortable, even, dare he believe it, warm. He felt his eyes go wide and his mouth fall open and asked the empty air the first question that came to mind, where am I? The impossibly large trees and roots of the forest of death were the last place he remembered being. It had been the second part of the Chunin selection exams and he'd been forced to fight against a hidden grass ninja too strong to be anything less than a jounin, and he had a sneaking suspicion that whoever it was wasn't supposed to have been there. He had been surrounded by gnarled wood 3 times its natural size and leaves as big trash can lids. But where did that leave him now? What little he could remember about the academy lessons that seemed a lifetime ago said that the land of snow was the only place that got snow. But how would he have gotten to the land of snow, hundreds of miles away, across a sea, from the middle of fire country? On this plain of never-ending ice and snow, he thought in a rare philosophical moment, did I die? So, you're finally here, a deep voice, like rolling thunder, spoke. Naruto nearly jumped out of his skin and spun around as fast as he could, only to come face to face with a huge blue dragon. Its scales were smooth and slick and reflected the minuscule light perfectly, which gave them an crystalline shine. Atop its head was a crown of spikes, each of which jutted backwards like shards of broken glass. Its nostrils were thin and narrow, almost serpentine, and its snout was long and canine, like a dog's. Unlike his own puffing pants, its slow, gentle breaths made no clouds in the cold air. 2 great, dark-feathered wings were unfurled along its back and its first pair of short, thickly muscled legs supported it a little farther down. There was a moment, a flash of light through the clouds, and the dragon was, for that single instant, made entirely of ice. Tell me, can you hear my name? The dragon moved closer, and its glowing red eyes bored into his own. Can you call out to me, Maru? Is that you? Naruto asked, his voice low and quavering with fear and awe. His eyes were wide and his breathing came out in shaky rasps. His heart thumped loudly, beating a tattoo against his ribs. Are you Maru? The dragon bared 2 rows of shiny carnivorous teeth in a frightening parody of a satisfied grin. So, you can hear. A burst of warm breath came from its nostrils. After years of having your ears plugged by the 9-tailed fox, you can finally hear me. It's been so long, the fox? Naruto parroted. His features quickly contorted into rage. Something horrible twisted in his stomach. The creature that stole his parents and his childhood from him. What does he have to do with anything? Do not be so quick to hate, child. A second, much stronger burst of breath came, knocking Naruto off his feet. He fell on his butt with a soft grunt. If it were not for that beast, you would likely have failed to survive your rough childhood. He may have blocked me from you, but he did keep you alive, even if it was more for his own self-interest. What? Naruto's eyebrows shot up into his Hittite. The sick feeling in his gut morphed into a swift thrill of shock. But how? He protected you when I could not, the dragon responded calmly. He healed you when others would have waned away into nothing. He soothed you when sleep would not come to your young mind. But that was all his fault to begin with. Naruto protested loudly. The anger was back, bitter and furious. If he hadn't attacked Konoha, then he wouldn't have gotten his fuzzy but sealed, and I would have had a normal life. And he would have had parents. A mom and a dad. People who loved him for who he was, unconditionally, who would have tucked him in at night, whispered sweet nothings in his ear, comforted him after a nightmare. He might have even had a younger brother or sister. A family. Do not be so quick to judge, Reincarnation purred. The fault of the 9-tails attack lies in the accursed blood of the Uchiha. The one called Madara. The dragon's eyes flashed. Were it not for him, the beast would not be where he is. I knew you would have a family. Naruto was sure his confusion must have shown on his face. What does the Uchiha clan? That, I cannot answer, the serpentine beast interrupted. It had anticipated his question. Naruto had the feeling that Reincarnation was not being honest with him. I only know what information I can glean from the beast and his mutterings. Oh, Naruto said lamely. He glanced around, somewhat unnerved by the dragon's unblinking stare. He didn't want to ask what Reincarnation wasn't saying. So what are you? There was huff from the creature in front of him, almost like an amused chuckle, but Naruto dared not imagine he was right. The dragon's tone, however, was serious when it responded. I am the piece of your soul dedicated to fighting. I am the part of you that never gives up, even when your body is frail and defeated. There was something powerful in the beast's voice as it continued, its pitch rising. I am the wrath of heaven, the instrument with which you slay your foes. I am the lord of ice and snow, the master of all things water. I am the frigid bite of death. I am your sword and your shield, and I shall protect you until the bitter end. Its voice rose to a roar. I am Reincarnation. It bowed its head submissively, startling Naruto with a foreign gesture. Now command me, and raise your enemies to the ground. A sudden feeling of power rushed through his body, and he felt like he could do anything, beat anyone, and overcome any obstacle. It was like molten lava flowing through his veins, and with nothing but confidence, he reached out to touch the spiked crown of Reincarnation's head. The strange world disappeared in a flash of bright light. Naruto's eyes snapped open with a gasp, but he shut them immediately against the dim light that burned them like the midday sun. He turned over to his side and curled into a ball. It felt as though someone had slammed a sledgehammer into his stomach, as though a cannonball had knocked the air from him with the force of a freight train. He felt sure that he must be bruised black and blue. Ha! There was a loud thud, and Naruto thought briefly of a large, perfectly cooked steak being dropped unceremoniously onto a plate. Sakura's voice cried out in answer. A vicious crack rent the air, like that of bones breaking, shattered by the blunt, unforgiving earth. Naruto's mind felt hazy, like someone had stuffed his head full of cotton or like fog had filled up every nook and cranny of his skull. What's going on? Kin, out of the way. The words were thick and distorted, like they were tiny little soldiers trudging through a sea of molasses. The wind leapt to life, washing over his body like a gentle wave, a cool breeze that caressed his burning forehead. There were 3 sharp clunks and a soft explosion sound, one that Naruto recognized as Kawarimi. There was a battle? Ta. NNG, did someone get the number of that cart that ran me over? His head ached just as much as it had before, in that strange world. It was like someone had taken a drill to his skull and made several holes. Every beat of his heart sent spikes of pain lancing along every nerve in his scalp. He let out a soft hiss through his teeth and squeezed his eyes shut tightly. Useless. Another blast of wind, closer, much closer than before, showered him harshly and whipped his exposed fingers raw. His ears twitched at the dark scoff that followed. "Quiet! You're not helping. You're not fooling anyone." 3 more thunks, then another explosion, Kawarimi again. There was definitely a battle going on, and he really shouldn't be lying around when someone was fighting on his doorstep, but he couldn't muster the strength to care. He was in too much pain. Damn it! What I wouldn't give to know some medical ninjutsu right about now. Get serious! Another thud, heavier than any of the others before it, was followed by a gasp of surprise and the smell of fresh blood. Someone was wounded. A girl cried out in pain, muffled, like she was gagged or something, then several meaty whacks as someone hit something repeatedly. Then there was another thud as something or someone was thrown bodily to the ground. Wait a minute. That girl's voice, he recognized it. Sakura! His eyes snapped open and a cool, soothing relief swept through his body and eased away his pains. He stood in one fluid motion, his fingers wrapping around the hilt of a sword, one that he'd never even seen before, that sent a satisfied rush through his veins. Everyone and everything halted before him as he turned a frigid stare out at the forest around him. His iron grip on his sword tightened. "Naruto," Sakura whispered dully from her spot on the ground, one eye was already bruised and swelling shut. There were several cuts along her arms and legs, and small patches of blood were beginning to pool beneath her. She looked surprised to see him, like he was some phantom spectre back from the dead. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the broken and defeated form of Lee lying unconscious on the ground. Hey, the ninja with spiky black hair grinned smugly. So, one of those sleeping brats woke up, eh? Naruto focused his icy gaze on the sound Genin. Words tumbled past his lips before he knew what he was saying. Soten Nizaze, higher in Maru. Sit upon the frozen heavens, ice ring. The sword in his hand glowed bright blue, sprouting from its pommel a chain on whose end was a white steel crescent, and the spiky-haired Genin smirked, a cocky gleam in his eye. He scoffed, "That's it? What, nothing else? Am I supposed to be frightened of a little Genin with a sword?" "Zaku!" The bandaged one scolded. There was something antsy and agitated in his stiffened posture. Naruto moved, and in a blur, he was standing behind the spiky-haired Zaku, already in mid-swing. Startled, Zaku stumbled backwards awkwardly and landed on his butt as a flash of steel flickered over his head and severed several locks of black hair. Zaku stared. A swell of pride swirled in Naruto's chest. He felt invincible. It was like that final moment in his inner world, where he had laid his hand upon Hirinmaru's spiked crown and felt the liquid courage surging through his body. Like then, he felt as though no obstacle could stand in his way, as though he were untouchable. The sword felt so familiar in his hand, and every motion felt practiced to perfection, even though he had never wielded a katana before in his life. Instantly, Naruto was upon Zaku again, both hands grasping the hilt as his blade came down in a surprisingly graceful arc. Zaku yelped, rolling backward over his shoulder only to land straight on his feet, crouched defensively. He looked like a frightened animal too scared to move. It seemed that he could not decide whether to fight or flee. Something in Naruto crowed triumphantly, and it evoked in Naruto the urge to show the upstart in front of him its place. Bow before the ultimate predator, whelp, it seemed to say. Naruto moved to continue his assault, and Zaku leapt as far away as he could on chakra-enhanced legs, already preparing his own attack. To Naruto, he seemed to be moving in slow motion. He flung his hands out and the tubes in his arms whistled as air compressed inside them. Zankuha! A gale of tightly packed wind rushed from Zaku's palms, targeting Naruto, who had not moved and whose icy gaze had not wavered. The triumphant grin that stretched across Zaku's face made Naruto want to deck him. He'd show that punk what it meant to underestimate him. Naruto funneled chakra to his legs, and it was so incredibly effortless, and leapt upwards, the wind whistling in his ears as the figures beneath him grew smaller. He slowed to a stop, and there was a moment as he hung there in midair, feeling completely and utterly free, where his body was untouched by gravity. Then, as he started to fall, he swung downwards and called, Hirinmaru. From the arc of the blade, a winding, icy blue serpentine dragon sword, its eyes red and its jaw wide. It was headed straight for Zaku, and the expression on his face belied the surprise that seemed to have frozen him to his spot. Zaku! At the last second, Dosu called out his name and Zaku finally responded, vaulting from his spot as the sapphire beast closed in on him. He was not fast enough, however, to avoid it entirely, and his left arm was consumed. Behind him, as his female teammate gave a gasp, the dragon crashed into the ground, forming an almost flower-shaped pillar of jagged ice as the surrounding grass froze into miniature spikes. Naruto landed next to Zaku softly, marveling at how easy it all seemed as he stalked forward. Zaku looked frightened, and the terror radiating off of him only made Naruto's cold rage more ferocious. The predator had become the prey, and only now did it think of mercy. Every inch closer he got, the sound girl took in a harsher, more strangled breath. Zaku's left arm was entirely encased in ice, but that did not stop him from flinging out his good arm and calling Zankuha. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto conjured a wall of ice that deflected the attack effortlessly. The wall wasn't even dented. Then, Naruto vanished. He disappeared, and as he moved, the world around him seemed to have frozen. With a single hand, he swung, and then he stopped, sword outstretched. A line carved itself up Zaku's already injured right arm, then gave a spurt of blood. Zaku cried out in pain. In the span of a few moments, both of his arms had been rendered useless. One was frozen solid, slowly going numb, and the other had nearly been cut in half. Serves him right, Naruto thought viciously. His eyebrow twitched, then he spun on his heel, blocking the attack from Zaku's male teammate, Dosu. Metal clashed and sparks flew. Dosu's gauntlet pushed against Hirinmaru, and neither of them gave a single inch. Ice crept from the shallow groove Naruto's sword had carved, slowly consuming Dosu's arm in a heavy layer of crystallized water. Dosu's one eye went wide, and he tried to get away, but Naruto's left hand shot out and locked his elbow in a grasp as strong as steel. He wriggled desperately, trying to tug himself free, but Naruto's grip was firm and unwavering. Once the gauntlet was completely frozen over, Naruto let go of Dosu and brought his sword up as his enemy stumbled. With all of his strength, he slammed the butt of his sword's hilt into the metal glove, smashing it to pieces mercilessly. Dosu yowled and fell backwards, clutching at his severely injured right arm. Several scratches decorated the lacerated skin, and Naruto could not tell whether or not he had broken the bones, but he vindictively hoped that he had. Payback for hurting Sakura, he reasoned, with plenty of interest. As he stood there and the heady feeling of power began to drain, Naruto considered his options. He thought only for an instant of killing them, but had no sooner considered it than rejected it violently. His stomach threatened to rebel, and it was only the icy rage that was slowly thawing that allowed him to maintain the furious scowl and frigid expression on his face. He could not, however, simply allow them to walk away and lick their wounds. "Leave your scroll and go," he told Dosu evenly. He watched as Dosu's head snapped back up to look at him, his one visible eye impossibly wide. He had been expecting, Naruto imagined, to have both his life and the lives of his teammates forfeited. That did not help the queasy feeling in Naruto's stomach. "Leave your scroll and go," Naruto repeated coldly, hoping that he did not have to repeat himself a second time. He needed for his stomach to settle a moment before he dared speak too much. Fortunately, Dosu nodded dumbly. With his good arm, he reached into his kunai pouch and pulled out a scroll decorated with the kanji for earth. Setting it down slowly, he motioned to his teammates silently. They left without another word. As soon as the team of Sound Genin had vanished, Naruto picked up the scroll and turned to show it off. He grinned and displayed it proudly. "Look, Sakura-san. I got us a scroll." Naruto did not bother to realize he had used "to-san" instead of a "chan," nor even that Sakura did not respond to him. She simply blinked and sat up. A part of him recognized, however, that Sakura was unsure what to make of him, and that startling realization shot a jolt of something unidentifiable through his stomach. She was looking at his sword with a measure of confusion, and that jolt became a quick thrill of nervousness. She must be wondering where he had gotten it, and that thrill of nervousness evolved into full-blown butterflies as he realized that he didn't have any explanation. He had no way to explain the beautiful sword in his hand, oddly easy and comfortable in his hand despite that it was nearly as long as he was tall. He had no way to explain where he had gotten a magnificent daikatana with a hilt wrapped in azure and a pommel and star-shaped guard made of what seemed to be antique gold. He had no way to explain the sword with the long, silvery blade and glass-like shine, a deadly weapon with a razor-sharp edge, clearly very expensive. He could not remember seeing a blade of such quality in his life, not even the legendary Kubikiri Hucha once wielded by Momochi Zabuza. That sword, where had Naruto gotten it? That must be what Sakura was asking herself. That was what several people, including probably the Hokage himself, would ask when they saw him with it. Even more pressing was what he had done with it. A high-quality sword he could have claimed he found in the forest, he could say that he'd taken from a dead team or from a team he had defeated. But a sword that could do all the things he'd done with it. No ordinary genin would be entrusted with such a thing. They were trainees, beginners with no real idea what they were doing. Not only would they not have the money for such an expensive weapon, but no one would dare give something so valuable to a mere genin. On the off chance he managed to convince everyone that he'd saved up and bought it with his own money, how would he explain where he had gotten it? Anyone who was suspicious of his story, and there would surely be a number of people, need only check the blacksmiths and weapon stores to discover that none of them had made it or sold it. And even if no one realized that he couldn't have bought it, how would he explain what he'd done with it? How would he explain the dragon of liquid ice? How would he explain the abilities he had shown with it? Even if people believed that it was an ordinary chakra blade capable of channeling jutsu and chakra, how would he explain where he'd learned techniques, especially one that could be mistaken for such a high-level jutsu as Suiryuden? The answer was simple: he couldn't. Panic shot outwards from his belly, and his brain conjured up a number of possible scenarios for what he imagined was inevitable. He saw himself, tied up in a basement somewhere, beaten and bloody as the ANBU interrogated him for answers, asking where Uzumaki Naruto was and growing ever angrier as he insisted tearfully that he was Uzumaki Naruto. He imagined his body, cold and pale, lying on a table as a man approached with a small, thin knife and slowly pushed the blade into his bloodless skin. He imagined himself strapped to a bed as dozens of faceless men in white poked him with needles and took blood and pieces of his skin day in and day out, unable to move and fed through tubes in his arms. Naruto nearly started crying. He didn't want to become a science experiment. What could he possibly tell them that could save his life? A wave of comfort, sort of like an invisible hug that reached all the way to his heart, washed through him and he was suddenly calm. Tell them the truth, Maru said soothingly. Truth is stranger than fiction. Tell your friends the truth, and let them keep your secret. Naruto relaxed and absent-mindedly sheathed his sword. Yes, he realized. That might work. Teamwork, like Kakashi-sensei was always going on about. Tell the people he trusted the truth and let everyone else scratch their heads. Hey! Naruto looked over as a girl jumped down from the trees, her brown hair tied up in 2 buns on the top of her head. Her white-eyed teammate frowned. That's a nice sword you have. Yeah, Naruto chuckled. He's great, ain't he? I'll say, she whistled. The hilt is amazing in and of itself, but the blade. I've never seen something of this quality before. It's a work of art. That must be a family heirloom or something. She giggled a little hysterically. So, he? Yeah, Naruto grinned. His name's Maru. He's the best sword you'll ever see. I can see that, she too grinned, and his owner isn't anything to sneeze at either. In a few years, you'll be beating them off with sticks. I've seen quite a few blades, but this one is something else. I knew you could do it with chakra, but I didn't know it was possible to channel jutsu through weapons like that. Even the White Fang's sword couldn't manage something so advanced. Her eyes roved hungrily over the hilt. He wondered if that's what he looked like when ramen was mentioned, taking in its splendor. So, did your Jonin-sensei teach you that? Naruto blinked, cocking his head to the side. Teach me what? Her eyebrow twitched, as though it would like very much to arch itself. You know, that dragon thing. He looked her oddly. She motioned with her arms as if swinging a sword, saying, where you just swing and this dragon comes out and attacks your enemies. Oh, that recognition sputtered to life in Naruto's brain. That's Maru. But I thought Maru was the sword, she stated lamely. Her lips were pulled into a confused frown that was, he had to admit, kind of cute. His both, Naruto told her matter-of-factly. He's the dragon and the sword. But that means she started, scrunching her face up as she put together the implications that statement brought. He thought that looked kind of cute, too. Man, what had he been missing out on? Had he been so focused on Sakura that he hadn't noticed how pretty some of the other girls could be? You have a dragon sealed inside of that sword? Something like that, Naruto admitted sheepishly. Truth be told, he wasn't sure himself. All he knew was that Maru was both his sword and the dragon, and so long as that didn't interfere with anything, he was going to leave well enough alone. As long as it worked, he didn't care about the how. Maru was Maru, and that was all that mattered. She opened her mouth and closed it several times, but nothing came out. He suddenly realized that he'd told her the secret he'd decided to tell only to those he trusted, and his insides turned cold, but he kept the smile and hoped that she didn't question it. If she didn't, if she left it alone and let it be, then maybe, just maybe, he could trust her. Finally, she decided upon an excited grin, giggling girlishly. She turned to leave, throwing a wave over her shoulder. You're an interesting guy. So let's meet again, Naruto-san. Don't lose, okay? Leaping into the trees, she and her team disappeared into the forest. Naruto couldn't help the grin that threatened to split his face. That girl was quite an interesting one. She was kind of strange, he had to admit, because it wasn't every day you found a girl so obsessed with weapons. He didn't really care, though, because she was interested in him as a person and that made her okay in his book. Though a part of him wondered if she wasn't more interested in his sword. He crossed his fingers and hoped she wouldn't blab his secret. That teammate of hers, though, Neji, was someone that Naruto figured he better watch out for. Lee had told him that Neji was the strongest genin in the entire village of Konoha, and Lee himself had easily beaten Naruto. If Neji was even stronger than Lee, that meant that Naruto would definitely have to keep an eye on the taijutsu prodigy, Hyuga Neji. His thoughts were interrupted by Sakura's excited cry of, "Sasuke-kun! Thanks for the save earlier, Kabuto!" Naruto called, grinning. Neither the pain in his stomach nor the powerful headache had reappeared, he had noticed as they leapt through the trees. His chakra control had gone to the dogs, though, so it was a bit difficult not to accidentally destroy the branches beneath his feet as he leapt onwards. It was by an incredible stroke of luck that Kabuto had shown up at their camp, just in time to stop Naruto and Sasuke from opening the Earth Scroll they had gotten from the Sound team. If they had, he had revealed, they would have been immediately disqualified and forced to stop their participation in the exams. It wasn't a problem, Naruto-kun, Kabuto called back, smiling. Are you sure there are still other teams left in the forest? Sasuke asked. Yeah, I'm positive, Kabuto answered. You just need to give it a little thought. In a jungle battle or in an open forest, like this, do you know the cleverest way to fight? The goal of the examinees is the tower at the center of the forest, which means that, on the last day, the easiest place to get a scroll is in the area around that tower. Oh, I get it. Sakura said, realization painting across her face. That means we're going to go after the teams that have both scrolls and are heading for the tower. That's only partly correct, Kabuto admonished gently. What? Because you're not the only one thinking that, he explained. Teams with the same idea will have set traps around the tower. All right, Naruto grinned. That means there'll be a lot of enemies sitting there waiting for us, right? All we have to do is beat them up and grab a heaven scroll, and we'll be home free. Nope, that's still not completely right, Kabuto said. Naruto nearly missed his next landing. We have to think of the collectors who appear in exams like this. Even really close to the tower, you're still not safe. Collectors will take as many extra scrolls as they can, so they can surrender one if they face an enemy they can't beat or give one to their comrades from the same village. Or they might even exchange it for information about getting through the remaining exams easier. As you've probably figured out, these are the tough guys looking to eliminate the competition for the next round. I see, Sasuke said smugly. Now I understand why you decided to come with us. You're scared of these guys, aren't you? Kabuto blinked, then smiled sheepishly. Yeah, I guess so. It was only hours later that they stood in front of the tower, but night had already fallen with all of its distant sounds. Somewhere, an owl hooted and crickets chirped incessantly. A wolf howled at the moon, bright and full, which had risen into the sky, casting an eerie grey light down upon the trees and the tower. The closer they got to the tower, the smaller the trees seemed to become, though they were still quite massive, so Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, with Kabuto leading them, stopped on one of the taller trees, looking out over the much smaller trees towards their goal. They were close, even if they walked, it was only a few hours away, half a day at most. And there's the tower, Kabuto said calmly. He adjusted his glasses. This is where things get serious. He turned to Team 7, frowning and solemn. From here on out, we should limit the amount of noise we make. If we go forward too loudly, all of those enemies we want to avoid will give us a very passionate welcome. Sasuke smirked, Sakura nodded, and Naruto gave him a grin and a thumbs up. Turning back forward, he knelt down and fished a small metal box out of his utility pouch, flipping it open casually. He held the box level with his right eye and closed the left, peering through the slot the box's lid and calculating something. Naruto thought that Kabuto must be a pretty smart guy to do that really complicated math all in his head. All right, he said, standing and snapping his box shut. He dropped it unceremoniously back into his utility pouch. This is fine. We'll keep heading in this direction. and they were off again, dropping down to the grass as they reached the smaller trees and proceeding cautiously, every sense thrumming and humming with tension. They were like taut bow strings, even the slightest new sound or movement sent them vibrating and fingering their weapons. It became obvious as they continued that they were not the first team to have walked that path. They spotted several traps, a number of which had already been sprung and still held their victims. More than once, Naruto had grimaced as his stomach threatened to revolt and thanked whoever upstairs was listening for the fact that the darkness made it difficult to see the expressions of eternal agony carved onto the faces of the dead. As they went on, however, Naruto noticed a faint prickling in the back of his neck, the fine hairs there were standing on end, and there was an almost warning tingle at the base of his skull. He paid it no mind, figuring it was probably the tension, and continued onwards. Behind him, Sakura collapsed to her knees. "I can't go on," she panted. "No matter how far we go, the tower never seems to get any closer. It's so weird. It's like it's right in front of us." "You're right," Sasuke murmured suspiciously. "It seems that we've already fallen prey to someone's passionate welcome," Kabuto said with a frown. He pointed at a team of trap victims, a team that looked eerily familiar, Naruto realized. "See? We've passed them at least 3 times, now." "No way," Sakura whispered. "Genjutsu," Sasuke confirmed. "So it seems," Kabuto agreed. "They had us all fooled and very carefully tricked us into walking in circles. We're being watched. They probably wanted us to waste our strength so they could ambush us when we tired out. Then we're already playing into their hands," Sasuke mused stoically. Kabuto cast his eyes around, adjusting his glasses absently, "and we could be attacked at any moment." No sooner had he spoken those words than did they appear, dozens of identical figures, all pulling themselves out of branches or up from the grass, melting out of a tree, body half fused with the bark. They were all the same and all approached sluggishly, slumped over and slouched, looking at Team 7+1 with blank, soulless eyes. Each wore also the headband of the Rain Village, with 4 vertical slashes down the metal plate that protected their forehead. "They're here," Sasuke declared simply. Naruto grinned and reached up, freeing Reincarnation effortlessly. The sheath evaporated into a thick, frosty vapor. En masse, eh? This'll make for a fun handicap. "There's so many," Sakura whispered worriedly. "And they're all bunshin," Kabuto added. One of the enemies chuckled through his mask, like a mouse in a trap. "I'll show you a mouse," Naruto shouted, lifting his sword. "Soten Ni's ace, higher in Maru." The sword lengthened and the chain and crescent dangled down to the ground. Naruto swung, curving it horizontally at his waist. Hyoryu Senbi. Ice Dragon Swirling Tail. A wave of water formed along the arc of his blade, washing over several of the bunshin, then flash froze into a spiked crescent of ice, slanted outwards. A number of the doppelgangers were consumed in the ice and frozen solid, but those who had been skewered or sliced instead grew appendages, sometimes a whole second torso, head, and pair of arms, and stood back up. Naruto took a step back, horror etched across his face. "What the?" The horror quickly contorted into rage. "Yeah? Then take this." He swung again. Higher in Maru. A dragon leapt from his blade, soaring forward and catching several bunshin at once, driving them back and into a tree, splashing and tearing away the bark. Naruto swept his sword upwards. Zeku. Severing void, the torrent of water leapt upward and cut clear through the tree, splitting it in half height-wise before freezing into a vertical crescent. The clones that were caught did not break free and melted into a brown goop. "Sasuke-kun!" Sakura's voice cried. Naruto looked back to see Sasuke rigid and motionless on the ground, Kabuto's body thrown protectively overtop him. Kabuto himself had been injured. There was a nasty-looking, if rather shallow, gash on his left arm, and the kunai that had done it was embedded in the grass a little ways away. Naruto looked back to the clones in front of him and brandished Reincarnation defensively. "So, wait a minute," he said. "If Kabuto got hurt, does that mean that they're Koge bunshin with real flesh?" But Koge bunshin disappear if you get a good hit in." "They don't. That means they're illusions, right?" "Damn it, which is it?" "They're not real, Naruto," Sasuke said, sitting up. He was clutching oddly at his shoulder. "They're illusions." "But Kabuto-san's wound is real," Sakura protested. "No, Sasuke-kun's right," Kabuto said, standing straight. He rubbed at the cut on his arm tenderly. "The real enemy is hiding somewhere, using these clones to mask their own attacks. It gives the illusion that the bunshin are the ones attacking us. Then I'll find the real ones and beat them up," Naruto declared angrily. It was that simple. The bunshin didn't matter. "Wait a moment, Naruto-kun," Kabuto said. "That's the whole point. We don't know where the real ninja are. With guys like these, who aren't that great at ninjutsu or taijutsu, they prefer to attack with genjutsu like this from the safety of their hiding spot. They won't show themselves until we can't move anymore at all. The only thing we can do now is dodge." Naruto snarled. He couldn't accept that. Not when he had all this new power. What was it good for if it couldn't help him win? "Screw that," he said furiously, rearing back his arm. Water swirled around the blade of his sword, snake-like. "I'm leveling this place. See if they can hide without any trees." A look of realization and a little bit of horror dawned on Sasuke's face. Naruto saw it out of the corner of his eye, and it gave him such an incredible feeling of power. "Shit!" he cursed. He grabbed Sakura by the shoulder and Kabuto by the arm and pulled them to the ground. "Get down! Higher in Maru!" Naruto spun on his heel, swinging himself and his sword in a complete circle. A torrent of water, as much liquid ice as anything else, gushed outward from the tip, slicing the surrounding trees and brushed clear off their trunks and washing them away with all the power of a waterfall. As powerful as it looked, it sounded just as much so. The water roared as it flooded outwards, clamoring and pounding like the white rapids just before a waterfall. The trees rooted strong enough not to be swept away gave loud, ominous cracks before they split, leaving behind only a mangled trunk and half-upturned roots. There were 3 panicked screams, then quiet. When everything had stilled, Naruto saw Sasuke, Sakura, and Kabuto lift their heads to look around, and they promptly let out a collective gasp. They were in a big circle of clear, dry land, maybe 12 feet in diameter at the most, but outside of it was layer upon layer, wave upon wave, of frozen water, jutting out from the center in jagged spikes. Those trees that had not been completely washed away were impaled viciously. None of them wanted to imagine a human's fate on the business end of those spikes, and there was no sign of the 3 rain ninja. Naruto, panting, sank to one knee, using his sword, which had returned to normal, as a crutch. "And that," he said breathlessly, "is why you don't screw with Uzumaki Naruto." "I think you overdid it, Naruto-kun," Kabuto said shakily as he pulled himself to his feet. "I mean, the clones are gone, but where are the real ninja? Without them, you can't get the scroll you need. Right here." A second Naruto dropped the 3 rain ninja unceremoniously on the ground. They were unconscious. "And, looky! Grinning, the second Naruto reached into its utility pouch and held out a white scroll. The Heaven Scroll! Sakura was suddenly on her feet, her face screwed up in a furious scowl and stomping angrily over in the clone's direction. The Kage Bunshin didn't know what to do, cringing away from her as she got close, and threw its arms up to protect its face. Sakura didn't bother with its head and punched it mercilessly in its unguarded stomach. The Kage Bunshin vanished with a puff and Sakura caught the scroll effortlessly. The real Naruto let out a breath, like he'd just been on the receiving end of a punch to the gut, and shouted indignantly, "Hey, that hurt." "Well, it should." Sakura yelled back without bothering to realize that she'd punched a clone, not the original. "You deserved it. That was the most incredibly reckless thing you've ever done, and considering the whole fiasco with Zabuza, that's saying something." "Well, at least I did something," Naruto retorted. "If I hadn't done that when I did, we probably would have been stuck here till next year." "Oh, so that gives you the right to almost kill your teammates. Do you realize how close you came to hitting one of us with that spark of brilliance? You could have taken my head off. You could have cut Sasuke-kun." Naruto snarled. "'Cause Rikudo forbid if Sasuke were to ever break a nail." He affected a falsetto voice. "Oh, no, Sasuke-kun. You've got a smudge of dirt on your nose. The world is ending. The sky is falling. Oh no. This isn't about Sasuke-kun. This is about how you almost." Naruto wished at that moment that things had not gone back to normal, and that Sakura was still staring at him like she didn't know what to make of him. At least then, it would have been quiet. "I say we open the scrolls," Naruto said, injecting his opinion. After roughly 3 hours of non-stop running, Team 7 had finally parted ways with Kabuto and made it to the tower where they promptly got into a fight about what to do. "Idiot!" Sakura punched Naruto over the head, a vein popping out on her brow. "Anko-san said not to open the scrolls. We'd get disqualified." she was talking about before we got to the tower. Naruto shouted back, rubbing the bump forming on his cranium. I'm the one who got us both our scrolls. If it wasn't for me, we'd still be out there. I don't care. Sakura fumed, glaring at him. I'm not about to let you and your stupidity get Sasuke-kun disqualified from the Chunin exams. It's logic. Naruto argued angrily. We're in the tower with no one to greet us. The only explanation is that the scrolls have something to do with our qualification into the next part of the exams. Since when do you know anything about logic? Sakura demanded rhetorically. I'm not going to let you take any chances. This is one of the most important milestones in Sasuke-kun's life. You're not going to mess that up. Jeez. Naruto flung his hands up in exasperation and rolled his eyes. For the smartest girl in the academy, you sure are pretty dumb. What did you say? Sakura's voice rose. I dare you to say that to my face. I said, Naruto yelled back, you're dumb. Come here, you little. Sakura reached for his neck. Her fingers were twitching as though she would like nothing more than to wring the very life from him. Hey, guys, both of them froze as Sasuke looked at them with his serious face. Naruto thought it made him look constipated. I think we should open the scrolls. Naruto palmed his face as Sakura squealed and crooned about how right her Sasuke-kun was and about how he always had the best ideas. Even after the mess with the 3-sound ninja, she was still Sasuke's little cheerleader. He muttered to himself. Why did I even like her, anyway? He jerked his thoughts to a halt. Why was he using the past tense? He liked Sakura, didn't he? As in, still does? Always has? No, he realized. His stomach gave a funny jolt. He didn't like Sakura anymore. His heart, which used to flutter excitedly every time he greeted her, had been calm every morning since the one-sided battle with those sound freaks. His belly, which had done flip-flops at the sight of her smile, had been calm for just as long. Every reaction his body had had to her since he had started crushing on her had just stopped. The realization sputtered to life in his brain. He didn't like Sakura anymore. His lungs suddenly constricted and forced the air from his chest. Every muscle in his body seized abruptly and froze, and his eyes grew impossibly wide as his mouth formed into a small, puckered O. His heart skipped a whole 2 beats. He didn't like Sakura anymore. A tentative, nervous excitement built up in his gut, slowly branching out and feeding adrenaline to his arms and legs, then up his neck and into his head. He suddenly felt free. Free, like he'd been imprisoned in the dark for years and was suddenly being let out into the sun. He felt absolutely liberated. He didn't like Sakura anymore. Come on, Barker. Sakura pulled him from his thoughts by the sleeve of his jacket, shoving the heaven scroll into his stomach forcefully. Help me open the scrolls. Grudgingly peeling open the scroll given to him, he stared at its contents. Several characters were written down, focused around single kanji in the center. Naruto blinked. Jin? As soon as the word left his lips, the scrolls began to smoke and sizzle in their hands. Naruto nearly dropped it as Sasuke spoke again, his tone urgent. Naruto, Sakura, throw the scrolls away. Trusting the archer to know what he was talking about, though Naruto would never admit it aloud, his teammates hurled the scrolls at the floor several feet away, watching as the smoke rose to an apex and exploded outwards. As the smoke began to clear, however, a shape could be seen within the dispersing cloud. Team 7 tensed, prepared to fight whatever had appeared from their scrolls. Naruto blinked in surprise, then grinned. Iruka-sensei. True enough, the smog dissipated, revealing their trusted academy teacher, Umino Iruka. He grinned at them and gave them a friendly wave. Hey, guys. It's been a while, who? He looked them all over, and his eyes halted at each scratch, scrape, and bump. Looks like you guys have been through the meat grinder. Sakura stared, confused. Iruka-sensei, what just happened? Oh, well, Iruka rubbed the back of his neck. The summoning spell on the scrolls was designed to let us Chunin greet the applicants at the end of the second exam. It's just luck that I was the one who wound up meeting you 3. Congratulations! You all passed the second exam. Naruto grinned broadly and thumbed his nose, but didn't do anything else. Iruka blinked, but didn't comment on the fact that Naruto wasn't bouncing around the room. Naruto was just being patient. Soon enough, he'd drag Iruka off to Ichiraku's for ramen. If we had sneaked a peek at the scrolls before the exam was over, Sasuke started. What would you have done, Iruka-sensei? Iruka scratched his temple with his index finger, sharp as ever. Hey, Sasuke! He shrugged. Our orders were very specific. Anyone who opened a scroll too soon was to be knocked out until the end of the second exam. Sakura rolled her eyes heavenward and wiped her brow in relief. Her gaze flickered back to the poster on the wall, which they had observed briefly before the earlier fight had broken out. If there was one thing Naruto had to admire about her, even now, it was the speed at which her mind seemed to work, and how it latched onto a subject so thoroughly and refused to let go until it was satisfied. "Sensei," she said, "what does that text on the wall mean?" "It's incomplete, so I don't get it." Iruka glanced over his shoulder at it, then looked back at her, grinning and rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. "Actually, I was just about to explain that. That's the other part of this mission." He gestured behind himself. "This is the principle that you should keep in mind as Chunin. Hokage-sama himself wrote it. The heaven in the text refers to the brain, a person's intelligence, and the earth refers to the body, a person's physical skills and strength. If heaven you lack, gain knowledge and be prepared. So, if a person's weak point is his brain, like Naruto, there was an indignant hey. He should study and prepare for his missions. And if earth you lack, run through the fields and seek strength, Iruka continued. So someone whose weakness lies in strength, like Sakura-san, should train herself every day. And if you have both earth and heaven, the most dangerous of foes can be beaten. Even the most perilous of missions can be overcome. They might even be easy. Then, Sakura said, "What about the missing letter?" Iruka lifted one of the scrolls that had summoned him, revealing the blank center, person. The character for person that was in here goes in the blanks. The survival mission you took in these past 5 days tested the basic abilities of the examinees as Chunin, and you guys completed it a day early. Carve the importance of knowledge and strength into your heart. Chunin are leaders. Take this principle with you and proceed to the third exam. That's all I was ordered to tell you. There was a moment of silence as his expression softened. Listen about the third exam, don't overdo things, okay? The 3 genin looked at him, blinking in surprise. He continued, I mean it. I worry about you guys. Especially you, Naruto. Naruto grinned. Don't worry about me, Iruka-sensei, he said, fingering the hilt of his sword. Iruka suddenly blinked, and it seemed he'd just realized that Naruto had it the entire time they'd been talking. No one in this exam is a match for Reincarnation. Naruto felt faintly the presence of Reincarnation hovering protectively over his shoulder and watched as Iruka's eyes went wide. His heart skipped a beat, but he made sure that his grin never faltered. Was Iruka seeing Reincarnation? He wondered. And was Reincarnation doing it on purpose? Iruka grinned, rubbing his neck sheepishly. Yeah, I guess so, huh? In the front of the room stood a group consisting of Chunin, Jonin, and the Hokage. Protruding from the front wall was a pair of stone hands forming the seal for Ram. The Hokage's gaze swept out over the assembled genin, and Naruto saw the old man's lips twitch as their eyes met, like he was holding back a smile. Naruto looked around him at the remaining contestants. 21 of them had made it, and the majority of them were from his own village. 9 of those 21 were rookies, himself included, and another 3 belonged to a team that had only been in rotation for a year, Hyuga Neji, Tenten the Weapons Girls, and Rock Lee, Gari's team, who had graduated a year before Naruto. A swell of pride arose in his chest. He'd made it to the third exam. He'd passed the test that had disqualified 51 other examinees. At the front, Kakashi and Gari appeared to be having a conversation, or rather, Gari was talking at Kakashi, who made no motion to signal that he was paying any attention. When Gari had finished speaking, Kakashi looked at him after a moment of silence and said a single sentence. Naruto slapped a hand over his mouth to keep from laughing as Gari deflated and spun around to make half-angry gestures at the back wall. Anko stood straight and put a hand on her hip, smirking at the genin as though she knew a secret. Congratulations on passing. Hokage-sama will now explain the third test, so listen carefully, you brats. The Sandaime took a step forward. Before we begin, there is something I'd like you to know. He tugged his hat down slightly, bearing the kanji for fire imprinted upon its center. Why do we have all the alliance countries taking this exam together? To promote friendship amongst the countries and to raise the level of shinobi. I don't want you to be confused about the true meaning. This exam is a replacement for war among the allied countries. Sandaime's face was impassive as he took a puff on his pipe. If you go back in time, the current allies were enemies who fought each other over who would rule. In order to prevent wasteful fighting, the stage that those countries chose for fighting that is the origin of the Chunin exams. What do you mean? Tenten asked, leaning to the side and peering around the person in front of her to see Sarutobi. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Inuzuka Kiba shouted. "I thought the point was to select Chunin." Sarutobi continued, undaunted by the questions thrown at him. "It is true that this exam decides who is to become Chunin, but it is also an opportunity for the different countries to show off their ninja to the important figures who watch this third exam, feudal lords and famous people from various countries, all of whom are potential clients, are invited here as guests. All of them will be here and see each of you fight." He took another puff on his pipe. "If there's a significant difference in power, the stronger country will receive more jobs and the weaker countries will receive less. And, just as importantly, a village will be able to show its rivals how it's grown and the quality of its warriors. A country is only as strong as its shinobi village, and the village is only as strong as its ninja. A shinobi village is only as strong as its weakest link. And a ninja's true strength is only revealed in a battle of life and death." "Whatever," the red-headed Gaara muttered darkly. "Could you wrap up this philosophical talk and get down to the life and death stuff anytime soon?" "HMPH. If you insist." He paused for a second and took one last puff. "On to the third exam." Actually, a sick-looking Jonin appeared in front of the Hokage. "As referee Hokage-sama, if I may?" Sandame nodded, a small smile on his face. "By all means." The Jonin turned toward the Genin, revealing his weary face and the dark bags under his eyes. "I am Gecko Hayate and I am the referee." Cough, cough. "Before the third test, I'm afraid we'll have to hold a preliminary. Since we are going to begin right away, cough, cough, I must ask any who wish to quit to do so now." "Preliminary?" Kiba echoed incredulously. "Right now?" "Hayate-san, I don't understand," Sakura piped up. "Why do we need a preliminary? Can't we just start the third exam with the remaining examinees?" "Well," Gecko said, coughing again, "it's not as if the first two tests weren't challenging enough. On the contrary, they were quite difficult. We still have too many applicants, however, and, like Hokage-sama said, there will be plenty of nobles watching." "What does that have to do with anything?" Kiba retorted. Gecko coughed again. "The nobles will be traveling from all over to see the third exam, so the exam itself has to be quick and speedy to maintain viewer interest. To do that, we need to cut down the number of applicants with this preliminary round. As I said earlier, any who wish to quit may do so now without adversely affecting your teammates' chances of success. Everything from here on out will be one-on-one matches." "Well," Kabuto raised his hand, "I'm out of here." "What?" Naruto demanded sharply. "Kabuto-san, why are you quitting?" "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun," Kabuto sighed, "but I got the crap beat out of me in the second exam. And ever since that little fight I got into with those sound ninja right before the first exam, I've been totally deaf in my left ear." Kabuto shook his head helplessly. "Now they're saying this could be a fight to the death. I'm just not up to that." Naruto stared hard at Kabuto's retreating back, an uneasy feeling settling in the pit of his stomach. There was something off about what had just happened. He didn't know what, exactly, it was just that there was something wrong. Kabuto had lied. Lee had gotten beat up by those sound ninja much worse than Kabuto's injury during the first exam, yet he was well enough to fight a couple days later. There's no way Kabuto, who'd had 2 or 3 more days to heal, wouldn't have recovered, too. Hayate looked around, but no one else raised a hand in surrender. "Right then, cough, cough, if no one else wishes to forfeit, let's begin the preliminary rounds. As I stated before, it will be a one-on-one match, in other words, just like real combat. Since we now have exactly 20 people, there will be 10 matches, and the winners will advance to the third exam proper. There are no rules. You will fight until the other person dies, is knocked out, or admits defeat, so, if you don't want to die, please give up. However, if I judge that the match is over, I will stop you to prevent any unnecessary deaths." Now, he looked over his shoulder and gave Anko a quick nod, then looked forward again. Behind him, a panel on the wall far above his head slid open to reveal a large monitor. "If you'll turn your attention to the screen behind me, this board will randomly display the names of 2 fighters for each match, and, without further ado, will display the names for the first match." All of the genin turned their gazes to the large screen behind Hayate, watching as it came to life and the blackness faded into a dark grey. The letters EVS lit up in the very center. Above them was the name Uchiha Sasuke and below them was Rikudo Yoroi. "Now," Hayate said, "if those whose names were displayed would please step forward." Sasuke smirked as he and Yoroi moved towards the examiner. Both looked confident and sure of their own victory. Gecko Hate made a motion towards the stands, and if everyone else would please leave the arena. When everyone had left the area for the stands, he said, "First match, Uchiha Sasuke vs. Rikudo Yoroi. Are there any objections?" "No," both answered confidently. "Please begin." Yoroi made a hand seal. "Are you ready, Sasuke-kun?" He teased nastily. He slipped his left hand into his utility pouch and positioned his right to hover in front of his stomach. He withdrew a few shuriken, while Sasuke simultaneously withdrew a kunai from the holster on his thigh. Without warning, Yoroi whipped his arm around and flung his shuriken at Sasuke, who knocked them away with a sharp swipe of his kunai. Naruto only saw Sasuke wince and collapse to the floor, clutching oddly at the junction of his neck and left shoulder. Naruto frowned thoughtfully. Come to think of it, hadn't he done something similar back in the forest when they'd been fighting those rain ninja? Yoroi shot forward and slammed his fist at Sasuke's head, but Sasuke rolled and dodged out of the way. Yoroi's fist sunk effortlessly into the tiled floor. Plunging his kunai into the ground as a break, Sasuke spun around and twisted his feet, bringing Yoroi's legs from under him as he pulled the older genin into a painful-looking arm lock. His victory was short-lived. Yoroi let out a chuckle and his captured hand grabbed Sasuke's shirt in an iron grip. Naruto wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Why grab his shirt? For what purpose? It got even more confusing when Sasuke let out something between a gasp and a grunt and slackened his grip on his foe. Yoroi ripped his arm free with incredibly little effort and brought his fist down on Sasuke's chest. Naruto thought he heard Sasuke's ribs crack. The air driven viciously from Sasuke's lungs was clearly audible, even from the stands. His struggle to breathe was almost painful to watch. Jerking up, Yoroi spun around, straddling his opponent as he latched that same hand on Sasuke's head, and it appeared to shimmer and glow. "You're stealing my chakra," Sasuke gasped weakly, clutching at his opponent's wrist. His voice echoed throughout the deathly quiet stadium. Yoroi chuckled darkly, an evil grin hidden beneath the cloth on his face. "So you finally noticed." "Hey, Sasuke!" Naruto called down into the arena. "What the hell are you doing, letting this joker beat you up? Kick his ass." At that moment, Sasuke seemed to catch his second wind, and lashed out into Yoroi's stomach and kicked him off. He was on his feet almost the moment he'd broken free. There was a furious scowl darkening his face, and though he looked alert and focused, he seemed also distracted. Beside him, Naruto heard Sakura whisper Sasuke's name worriedly. Yoroi growled as he stood back up. He rushed Sasuke again, his technique charged and ready to go. Sasuke burst into motion, ducking under his attempt at grappling and sending a kick into the Yoroi's chin, forcing him into the air. Then, like Lee had 5 days ago, Sasuke followed him, appearing beneath Yoroi's airborne body. Sasuke pressed his index and middle fingers into his opponent's back. "It's over." Pushing off of the other genin's spine, Sasuke flipped over his enemy's body, kicking towards his stomach. It was blocked and Sasuke used Yoroi's arm as a springboard, landing a vicious backhand in his face. Still twisting, he fired a punch into Yoroi's stomach, knocking the air from his body. Now only a few feet above the ground, Sasuke used his momentum to swing around and bring a solid kick into Yoroi's body, slamming him the last few inches into the floor. Shusha Rendan. Sasuke named his technique. Yoroi let out a pained groan, then fell still as his head lolled to the side. Sasuke, apparently exhausted, collapsed backwards onto his bum. His breath came in short, shallow pants. Hayate bent over Yoroi, checking for signs of unconsciousness. When he was finished, he turned to the audience and declared, "Rikudo Yoroi is unable to continue. Uchiha Sasuke wins the first round and advances beyond the preliminary." Sasuke let out a breath of relief and collapsed backwards right into Kakashi's legs. Naruto blinked, then turned to look at where his sensei had been standing in the spectators' seats. But Kakashi didn't stand next to him any longer. He was indeed down in the arena, and he appeared to be talking Sasuke, but whatever he was saying was too low and quiet for Naruto to hear. "What do you want, Kakashi?" Sasuke asked flatly. He had not bothered to keep his voice down. Kakashi said something again, and Naruto gave a frustrated groan as he struggled to hear it, but it was no use. Kakashi was being deliberately quiet, probably to keep everyone else from eavesdropping on the conversation. But Naruto wanted to know what was being said, and it irked him that he couldn't, no matter how hard he strained his ears. "No," Sasuke refused. "I want to stay and watch the other matches." "Perhaps I wasn't clear," Kakashi said, a dangerous edge to his tone. It was the only thing he'd said that wasn't too hushed to make out. Naruto leaned over the railing, so far that he was in danger of falling over it, but though he could see the lips beneath Kakashi's mask move, he could not make out the words. Sasuke hesitated a moment, then scoffed in angry defeat, "Fine." And then Kakashi and Sasuke disappeared as a troop of white-robed medics lifted Yoroi onto a stretcher and carried him away. The screen flared to life again and rushed through the names of the competitors. Naruto half wondered what would happen if a person's name came up twice, on both the top and bottom. Would he have to fight himself? The names flashed to a halt and stopped ablaze the identities of the next combatants, Zaku Abumi versus Aburame Shino. Zaku smirked confidently. His left arm had thawed and his right was wrapped in white bandages. "Who's this loser?" Naruto scowled. It was that guy from the forest, that guy from the sound who had beat up Sakura. If he made it, that meant his teammates had, too. Naruto's fists tightened around the railing. Would he wind up fighting one of the sound again? If he did, when both Shino and Zaku had entered the stadium and stood in front of Hayate, the referee said, "We will now begin the second match." The remaining genin watched the match unfold. The 6 genin who had borne witness to Zaku's Zankuha, the remnants of Team 7, Team 10's Ino Shikacho, and Lee, winced sympathetically every time Shino took a hit from it. Hinata fidgeted with her fingers worriedly, her eyebrows knit. "Will Shino-kun be all right?" Naruto heard her ask softly. "I wouldn't worry about Shino." Naruto could tell from his voice that Kiba was smirking. "He's one of the guys even I don't want to fight." Neji watched the fight with a clear disinterest, as though it was beneath him. Naruto always hated those kind of guys, the ones who thought their name or better than average skills made them the divine's gift to man. For a rookie, Neji said lazily, "This guy isn't so bad." "But can he win?" Tenten grimaced when Zaku's arms ruptured, broken shards of white bone protruded from the mangled skin of his elbows and forearms. Naruto was torn between vindictive satisfaction and feeling sick. "It seems he can and did," she said flatly. Down in the stadium, Hayate shouted, "Winner, Aburame Shino." The screen lit up again as Zaku was carried away on a stretcher, Tsurugi Misumi versus Kankuro. The third match was a relatively quick one, the fastest yet. Tsurugi attacked and used his technique to wrap his body around Kankuro, and proceeded to break his neck. Only then had he discovered that what he was attacking was actually a puppet, and that the package wrapped in a mass of white bandages was the real Kankuro, safe and completely unharmed. With a twitch of his fingers, Kankuro had his puppet squeeze his opponent tightly, until Tsurugi was unable to continue. It was incredibly creepy, Naruto decided. Less than a minute after the match had started, Hayate said, "Winner, Kankuro." Ino and Sakura's match, which was after Kankuro's, ended in an anticlimactic draw. They were too evenly matched to take the other down, so they finished with a double knockout. Naruto could hardly believe it. The screen lit up for the 5th time, reading Temari versus Tenten. Temari was the worst possible matchup for Tenten. None of her weapons, not kunai, shuriken, kusarigama, senbon, nothing, could reach Temari at all. She was defeated easily, almost effortlessly, and when Temari won, sending Tenten up towards the ceiling, she caught her beaten opponent on the top of her steel fan. Tenten's back was arched at an unhealthy angle. Naruto felt a surge of anger burst in his gut. He may not know her that well, but he considered her his friend, and the only thing that stopped him from leaping into the arena was that Lee beat him to it. The normally calm, if extremely passionate, Lee looked positively murderous, and only Gai's reprimands to his young pupil prevented Naruto from taking off where Lee had stopped. Now was not the time and here was not the place, Naruto had gotten from Gai's short lecture. But if they met in the finals, Naruto promised himself he would definitely be getting some revenge. Noro Shikamaru versus Kintsuchi, a girl? Shikamaru asked, as if looking for confirmation. He sighed, Mendicuse. Their match didn't last very long either. Kin had Shikamaru caught in her trap for a few moments, but Shikamaru had come back and outdone her. Using his Kagemain no Jutsu, he forced her to hit her head against the wall. She knocked herself unconscious and Shikamaru was declared the winner. After Kin was carried away on a stretcher, the screen flashed again, revealing the combatants of the next fight, Uzumaki Naruto versus Inuzuka Kiba. "Ha! We got lucky, Akamaru!" Kiba gloated as he jumped down into the arena. Akamaru, his dog, gave an enthusiastic bark of agreement. Excited to finally have his match, Naruto flung himself over the railing, landing on the tiled floor with surprising ease. There was a huge grin on his face, one that was easily matched by his opponent. Hayate stood between them. Hey, Kiba clenched his fist. I feel bad for you, dead last, so I'll end this in one punch. Yeah, right, dog breath. Naruto shot back. I'm way different than I was before. In fact, you might as well just quit right now. Why don't you and your master go back to chasing cats? Akamaru isn't my master. Kiba shouted vehemently, glaring. He's my partner. Prove it, Naruto called coolly. Kiba growled. The seventh match, Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba, Hayate said calmly. Begin. Kiba's hands instantly clasped together in a hand seal, Ninpo, Shikyaku no Jutsu. Ninja arts, four-legged technique, Kiba dropped down on all fours as a cocky grin split his face. His canines lengthened into fangs and his fingernails into claws, sharp and pointed. Without warning, he dashed for Naruto, intent, it seemed, on fulfilling his promise and winning with a single attack. Naruto, too surprised to counter, was Kiba always this fast, was hit solidly in the stomach. He flew backwards and collided painfully with the stadium wall, which crumbled around him, sending up a thick dust. It's over, Hayate-san, Kiba said confidently, and Naruto could practically hear the smirk on his lips. He won't be getting up. Naruto's eyebrow gave a twitch, and any chastisement he had prepared for himself was flushed down the drain. But he mastered his anger, as he had learned long ago, back when everyone hated him, back before Iruka, Kakashi, and his friends, back before Konohamaru, Haku, Zabuza, and Inari. The best revenge was proving them wrong and making them eat their words. So as the smoke and rubble dispersed, Naruto stood up, rubbing his stomach with a mocking wince. The look of surprise on the faces of both Kiba and the rest of the audience sent a thrill of satisfaction through his gut. He grinned, "You're stronger than I thought. Guess I shouldn't have let you get that free punch in." His chakra control was shot, he knew, so the swarm tactics he'd used during Kakashi's bell test, against Mizuki, and on the bridge to scare the mercenaries wouldn't work here. With the way his chakra was fluctuating, he could get anywhere from 2 clones to 200, but never the exact amount he wanted. So Kogebunshin was out. Besides, he wanted to show off. He was getting tired of everyone always underestimating him. He unsheathed the sword on his back and the scabbard disappeared into thin air. Several people gasped and Naruto's grin widened. "Let's see how you do." There was a yell of shocked outrage somewhere up in the stands. "Teaching that kind of thing to a rookie genin?" cried a voice, but he paid it no mind. He didn't have the time, not when his opponent was tensing and prepared to pounce. Snarling, Kiba leapt at Naruto claws first, swiping towards his chest. Holding his weapon one-handed, Naruto deflected the blow easily, knocking Kiba to the side. A dark growl rising up in his chest, Kiba turned around and ran forward, taking another swing. Again, Naruto deflected it, flinging a foot out to trip the other boy. Kiba tumbled headfirst to the ground. His momentum carried him nearly 2 whole yards. Rolling, he flipped back onto his feet, digging his nails into the tile to slow his movement. An angry snarl curled at his lips, exposing his large incisors like a rabid dog. He reached into his kunai pouch and pulled out something small enough to fit in his fist. He flung them and they exploded, releasing a thick smoke that rose up and engulfed Naruto like a woolen blanket. Naruto raised his free arm and covered his mouth, peering out into purplish fog with narrowed eyes. He couldn't see a thing, not even the lights above him or the floor beneath his feet. He was blind, and he was reminded suddenly of Zabuza's Kirigakure no Jutsu, of the terrible fear that trembled inside of him then and the burst of chakra Kakashi had used to clear the mist. He was reminded that sight and the ability to see weren't necessary to fight. He was reminded that Zabuza had fought using only sound. So he closed his eyes and listened. And then he heard it, the scuffle of sharply clawed paws on the tiles behind him. He summoned a single Kogebunshin, gave a quick prayer of thanks that it had worked, and grabbed Akamaru out of the air by the scruff of his neck. The dog tried desperately to scratch at his face, but he held it at arm's length and handed it off to his clone. The sound of sandals came next, and it had to be Kiba coming towards him at a run. The flutter of cloth, Kiba's jacket, he realized, a triumphant grunt, and the sound of something being swung through the air. Kiba thought he was going to win, Naruto recognized blankly. Kiba thought he was going to beat him with this next attack, as though a couple smoke bombs, a dog, and a single punch would take him down. Kiba thought he was so weak that he wouldn't and couldn't fight back. Something cold blossomed in Naruto's chest, the same cold something that had erupted inside him during the Mizuki incident and in that battle with the sound team during the second exam. It was like fury or anger, but it burned frigid instead of molten. It left his head clear instead of hot and fuzzy and red. It gave him a laser-like focus. "Idiot," Naruto said in an uncharacteristically calm voice. His free hand caught Kiba's wrist and held tight. Kiba, no matter how much he pushed, could not move his fist forward. "You really shouldn't underestimate me." A massive pressure leapt out from Naruto's body, sweeping away the smoke effortlessly. Kiba took in a short, sharp gasp and seemed frozen in place, his eyes wide and mouth half open. There were several gasps up in the stands. Sakura and Ino, Naruto could see, looked like they could barely stand upright. Shikamaru's hands were shaking violently, Neji was staring unblinkingly with his mouth half open, and all of the Jounin were wide-eyed. A canine whine drew Kiba's attention to Akamaru, who was being held up by a second Naruto only a few feet away. Naruto could see the disbelief in Kiba's face. He must be wondering how Naruto had come so far in just a few months. Naruto, who had been a failure during the academy, was beating him effortlessly. And Naruto took pride in that. For Kiba to be thinking like that, so shocked that Naruto was beating him, Naruto had to be proving him wrong. He was proving that he was worth something, that he wasn't the useless dropout everyone had thought he was. He let Kiba's arm go, then sent a roundhouse kick smashing into Kiba's cheek. Kiba went tumbling and skidding across the arena, and slid to a halt halfway to the other side. He'd pulled himself into a kneel almost the moment he'd stopped, wiping away the blood that was dribbling down from his split lip. "Let Akamaru go," Kiba snarled, eyes blazing with fury. Naruto nearly chuckled. "Did Kiba think him that stupid? What do you take me for, a fool?" he asked, arching an eyebrow. There were several snorts from his fellow genin. "Fine," Kiba reached into his pouch again, "have it your way." He tossed a small pill, which Akamaru caught in midair and promptly swallowed, his fur turning red as he growled. He spun, his claws dispelling the clone that held him. Running, he rushed past the stunned Naruto to stand faithfully next to his partner, Kiba. He wanted to protest, wasn't that cheating? But didn't even have the chance. Now! Kiba bent down, hands in a seal as Akamaru jumped atop his back. Jujin Bunshin. Man-beast clone. In a burst of smoke, a second Kiba had appeared in the place of the dog, smirking viciously at his opponent. Naruto blinked in surprise, he'd never seen such a technique. Then, he grinned broadly and brandished his sword offensively. 2 Kibas against one of him. This just might be fun. Soten ni Zace, Naruto commanded calmly, higher in Maru. "Oh no you don't." One Kiba cried as the 2 of them bounded forward on all fours. They spun, creating 2 vortexes that rushed forth side by side. Gatsuga. Fang over fang, Naruto took off in their direction like a speeding bullet, sword trailing by his leg. He leapt up just as he was about to collide with them, twisting to get between the 2 winding tornadoes. For a single instant, time slowed, and Naruto was drifting through the air, looking upwards. He was suspended there, watching as Kiba and Akamaru soared past him both above and below. And then it was over, and he spun to land upright. One of the vortexes suddenly veered off course. It was connected to Naruto, or rather, his sword, by a long metal chain. Naruto took hold of the chain with his free hand, using it to swing the vortex, which had stopped spinning to reveal a frozen Kiba, around on a circular path. When he released his grip, his captive kept going and slammed right into the wall. The ice covering Kiba shattered and the chain went slack, then snapped back to Naruto and hung limply down by his feet. Its extra length had vanished. The Kiba who'd had the misfortune to be swung into the wall fell to the floor and stayed there, motionless, but breathing. There was a brief puff of smoke and the transformation fell. It was actually Akamaru, not Kiba. His fur had returned to its normal white and his eyes were closed. He was clearly unconscious. The second swirl of air and chakra dissipated and a second Kiba landed, staring at small mass of fur that was his comrade. He growled, "Akamaru!" The dog didn't respond. "Akamaru!" Kiba cried. Naruto grinned and said, "Looks like he's out cold." There were several exasperated groans throughout the arena. "You!" Kiba snarled. He ran forward again, once more transforming into a spinning vortex as he shouted, "Tsuga!" Piercing fang, Naruto leapt over the attack, turning around in midair as he brought his sword up. Both hands tightened over the hilt, the blue wrappings rubbing comfortably against his palms. With a quick jerk, he began his downward swing. An azure dragon jolted forth from the blade's majestic arc, its red eyes gleaming. The dragon roared as it soared for its target, carving a winding path through the air of the arena. Kiba stopped spinning and turned around, surprise etched onto his face as the beast charged towards him. Kiba-kun! Kurenai called in alarm. Her voice seemed to snap Kiba out of his stupor, and he dodged at the last second, watching as the dragon collided with the tiled floor. A large ice spike remained protruding from the ground, its edges jagged and sharp. Cold steel pressed up against Kiba's neck. Naruto stood in front of him, Maru poised threateningly against his opponent's jugular vein. His eyes were as icebergs floating in the frosted sea. You lose. Kiba jerked forward, clutching at his stomach where Naruto had punched him as his knees fell from under him. Kiba took one more glance at Naruto, then collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Naruto swung his sword over his shoulder, placing it in the sheath that had just reappeared as if from nowhere. Heiei knelt down, checking on Kiba. He stood a second later, raising his hand in the blonde's direction as he said, in the loudest voice he could muster, "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto went back up to the stands again as Kiba and Akamaru were carried away on a stretcher. He felt invincible again, like nothing could touch him. He had just reached the spectator stands when two more names flashed onto the large screen. Hyuga Hinata versus Hyuga Neji. A few minutes later, they stood across from each other. Neji's stance was firm and strong, but Hinata was hunched over herself and seemed to be trying to make herself as small as possible. Her legs were unsteady and her hands were shaking violently. The contrast was incredible. "I never thought I'd be facing you," Neji said coolly, his face carved into a stoic mask. "Hinata-sama." "Neji-san," Hinata whispered. "Before we begin, I'd like to tell you, Hinata-sama," Neji spoke calmly, "to surrender. You're not fit to be a ninja." "And no. You are too gentle," Neji explained. "You seek harmony and to avoid conflict. You allow others to steer you, and you follow them because you can't stand up for yourself. You have no self-confidence. You thought it would be fine to remain a genin, but a team cannot enter with all three members, so you went along with Inuzuka and Aburame. You are here unwillingly." "No," Hinata interrupted. "I entered this exam to change myself." Neji's eyes narrowed. "You really are a spoiled brat of the main house, aren't you? Don't you understand? People cannot change. A loser like you will always be a loser." That struck something in Naruto, and the anger that had begun to simmer when Neji started his tirade erupted in full-blown rage. His fists clenched tightly upon the steel railing, and it was all he could do not to jump into the ring and deck that pompous asshole. "Shut up!" Naruto shouted. The steel beneath his fingers gave an abused groan. Neji's narrowed eyes turned in his direction, but he was not fazed. "I'm getting tired of hearing all this stupid shit. Oi, Hinata, don't listen to him. Kick that jerk into next week." Something changed then in Hinata. Her shaking legs were still and firm. The slump of her shoulders straightened. Her bowed head lifted and was held high. Every iota of fear and uncertainty had been shredded and vanished. The girl who stood there now exuded confidence so potent that it was almost palpable. Something in Naruto that he could not name growled in approval. There was a burn of adrenaline in his stomach that had nothing to do with hunger or anger. Hinata moved into a stance. Neji caught it out of the corner of his eye and smirked, then sunk into his own stance. "Begin." In an instant, they were at each other's throats. The 10-foot distance that separated them closed almost like magic and, in a flash, they were mere inches apart. Neji ducked under Hinata's first strike, stepping inside her guard and aiming his own attack at her heart. Hinata quickly dodged to the side, going against the traditional Juken motions by throwing a roundhouse kick into Neji's stomach. Neji used his momentum to duck under her kick, tucking his body into a ball as he rolled out of the way. Faster than most of the genin could follow, he was on his feet again, flying towards Hinata with as much speed as he possessed. Hinata moved to the side of his first glowing hand, but wasn't fast enough to dodge the follow-up attack of Neji's left hand. Hinata winced and stumbled backwards, clutching at where her cousin had made contact. Naruto heard Gaara-sensei explaining the Hyuga clan taijutsu, how it was designed to attack the inside of the body instead of causing blunt force damage. It was a style that struck the chakra network and organs instead of the skin and bones. "You should give up," Neji said again. "It's clear to me that the differences in our skills are too great. This road only ends in your failure." "I won't," Hinata declared firmly. "I don't go back on my word. Because that is my nindu." Something happened, then Naruto felt it. There was a short pause and Hinata stood motionless, completely stopped. Maru roused in the back of his mind curiously, as though he sensed something familiar. Naruto had a short vision of a blazing fire, which coalesced into a flaming bird and gave a single flap of its massive wings. He blinked and the image was gone. Hinata jerked to a start. She reached her hand forwards, grasping at air as her eyes narrowed determinedly. Hajike, Tobium. Snap, flying plum tree. Naruto saw Neji's eyes narrow as the gears in his head lurched into motion. It sounded similar, yet completely different from Maru, but if it had even the slightest bit in common, Neji made the connection at the same time as Naruto, that whatever was about to happen would be similar to Maru, and Naruto could see that Neji was determined to stop Hinata before she could unleash the full power of whatever she had just summoned. Prongs of red energy swirled in the air and coalesced into an oblong shape, then formed a sword in Hinata's palm and elicited gasps from her audience as Neji dashed towards her again, hands coated with chakra. With a wild, uncharacteristic scream, Hinata pointed the tip of her new blade at her cousin. A ball of pink energy shot forward, but Neji dodged around it, moved inside her guard, and knocked the weapon from her grasp. It clattered to the ground uselessly and vanished in a flash of red. "You're within my field of haki." Hinata's head whipped around just in time to see the angry, piercing expression on her cousin's face, followed quickly by Neji's blazing hands. The fingers struck home and Naruto watched her jerk as though she'd been stabbed. 2 palms. A swarm of hands, so fast that Naruto almost couldn't catch the individual motions, struck her, and she jerked again as though she'd been stabbed. 4 palms. Another swarm came and the number of hits she took quadrupled. 8 palms. 16 palms. A third swarm rained down on her, and she looked as though every hit drained her energy. Something in Naruto squirmed in anxious desperation. 32 palms. The last swarm came faster than the rest, and they seemed to strike everywhere at once, her arms, her legs, and her chest. To Naruto, it seemed like every jab of Neji's fingers was an arrow piercing her body, and there was a veritable cloud that struck her all at once. 64 palms. The final strike, the 65th palm, came at her, throwing her back a few feet where she collapsed to the ground. She was slumped and motionless. "This is the difference in talent that will never change," Neji said acidly. "This is the destiny that you cannot alter." Hate looked ready to call it, his hand was already in motion and his mouth had just opened to speak. He was going to give the match to Neji. "But, it's not over yet," Naruto shouted. Everyone turned to look at him, and stared as though he had grown a second head. "Get up, Hinata. Don't let him treat you like that. I believe in you. You can do it." But he couldn't let him end this. He couldn't let them give up on Hinata. There was something inside him, perhaps the part that sensed a kindred spirit, that would not let them stop her. Not here, after she'd gotten so far. "Naruto, stop!" Sakura yelled frantically. "She can't even stand. There's no way she can keep going. You're going to get her killed." It's not," a quiet voice interrupted. Down in the arena, Hinata was slowly lifting herself off the ground, and though her arms were wobbling, her legs were unsteady, and she looked as if a strong breeze would knock her over. She did not lie down or surrender. Hinata stood shakily. "It's not over. Just give up," Neji told her. "Go back to being the weakling of the main branch. Go back to suffering at the fate of our family's differences." "You can see everything," Hinata stuttered weakly. "But I think you're overlooking something. The one suffering from the differences in our family is you." And then Neji was moving forward, and it was clear, from the blazing look in his eyes and the raw intent radiating from him, that he was aiming to kill Hinata. In a flash, several people had moved to stand between the two Hyuga. Several Jonin, including Hayate, surrounded the white-eyed boy, poised to intercept if he chose to move further and kill his cousin. Naruto had his blade set and ready to slit Neji's throat, his eyes icy. "Soten Ni's ace," Naruto whispered coldly, and his intent swept outwards from his body as an incredible pressure. "Hirin, that's enough, Naruto-kun," Kakashi stated calmly, his tone firm and brooking no argument. The pressure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, and Naruto turned his head, staring at his Jonin sensei with his frigid eyes. Hinata coughed painfully and collapsed backwards. Naruto was at her side in an instant, lowering her gently to the floor as she trembled and coughed again. Did I?" Hinata coughed violently, and there were increasingly large amounts of blood mixed in with her saliva. Her sword had become an ordinary katana. Her eyes were closed. Did I do good, Naruto-kun? Yeah, Naruto whispered soothingly. She didn't respond, not even to loose a satisfied sigh. She'd lost consciousness barely a second after asking. You did great. More blood trickled from her mouth, and it didn't show any signs of stopping. Naruto's veins ran cold and his breath caught in his chest. The only thing he could come up with to explain it was internal bleeding, and considering the numerous internal injuries she had to be suffering from, what kind of person used deadly force against a member of his own family, she might not make it all the way to the hospital. His fists clenched tightly and he stared furiously at the tiled floor. There wasn't anything he could do, he didn't know any medical ninjutsu at all. I wouldn't be so hasty, child, a soft voice said. Naruto's gaze jerked to his right. Hirinmaru's heavy snout was hovering over his shoulder as the dragon took in Hinata's injured form. To Naruto's surprise, the world had stopped and not a soul was moving or even breathing. I will provide and manipulate the energy, all you have to do is move your hand where I tell you. Naruto nodded quickly, he was desperate. He wanted to save Hinata, no matter what. Instantly, the world started up again as Hirinmaru disappeared. No more than a second later, Naruto was flooded with a powerful feeling and his body felt lighter than air. Now, Hirinmaru's voice whispered softly, unzip her jacket and take it off. The first place we must pay attention to is her heart. Nodding almost imperceptibly, Naruto dutifully unzipped the Hinata's heavy jacket and brushed the flaps aside. He blushed slightly at the sight of her feminine assets, far more than Sakura had, a treacherous part of his mind pointed out, restrained only by a tight black shirt, but knocked the thought away as he rested his palm, glowing white, against her sternum. What are you doing? Kurenai demanded from him hotly, but he ignored her, moving his hand further down to rest on her bruised stomach at Hirinmaru's command. Strangely enough, he could sort of feel the damaged capillaries and taut smooth muscles heal under his fingers. It was kind of like taking someone's pulse, except he could feel the damaged flesh knitting itself back together. Once more, he moved his hand, delicately peeling her jacket off so as to reach her arms. He watched in amazement as the purpling skin slowly returned to its natural cream color under his touch, until no sign of the bruises remained. The glow dissipated. Naruto suddenly felt dizzy and lightheaded. Bed sounded good right then. But not yet, he still had something he needed to do. He turned, dipping his hand in the small pool of Hinata's blood, then lifted both his now crimson fist and his blazing blue eyes to Neji's stoic form. In the finals, he promised viciously, you're going down. His vision blurred and the world swayed around him, then he fell backwards into someone's arms and knew nothing more. When Naruto awoke, something fuzzy was tickling his nose and his arms were thrown over something large and wide. Blearily, he opened his eyes to see the gravity-defying white hair of his Jonin sensei and the cobblestone streets of his home village, Konohagakure no Soto. He blinked, mumbling weakly, huh? Oh, Naruto-kun. Kakashi glanced back at him, adjusting the boy's position on his back. You're awake. Good. UN? Naruto answered lamely. What happened? I didn't know you could forget that kind of thing, Kakashi said casually. After all, several people are wondering how you managed to heal such severe injuries when you yourself know nothing about medical ninjutsu. Kurenai-san was livid. She was afraid you were trying to do in Hinata-sama. Don't know, Naruto muttered, resting his pounding head against Kakashi's shoulder. Oh, but he had a horrible headache. Again. Hirinmaru told me what to do. Hirinmaru? Kakashi posed. Your sword told you how to heal someone? Not just a sword, Naruto loosed a jaw-cracking yawn. He's a dragon, too. Tenten-san said something about sealed in a sword. Oh? Kakashi asked. And this sword, this dragon, Hirinmaru, where did you get him? How long have you had him? Forever, Naruto said tiredly. According to him, he's been with me forever. He's only been a sword since the second part of the exam. There was a sudden tension in Kakashi's shoulders, but it was gone so fast that Naruto wasn't sure he hadn't imagined it. Are you sure he's safe, Naruto-kun? Are you sure he's a dragon? Are you sure he's not? There was a hesitant pause. The Kyuubi? No, his dragon all right, the blonde mumbled. Seen him and everything. Said something about being my sword and shield. Whatever that means. Kakashi remained silent after that, and Naruto bobbed in and out of consciousness for the next half an hour. Before he knew it, Kakashi was carrying him up a long set of steps, then another, and another. He heard Kakashi muttered something vague about Hinata and warning Kurenai, but his brain was filled with so much fog that he couldn't hear exactly what Kakashi intended to warn Kurenai about. There was a tug on Naruto's right leg, and he opened bleary eyes to see that Kakashi was working the knob of a very familiar door, the door to his apartment, in fact. A few weeks before, he might have wondered at the fact that Kakashi apparently knew where he lived, but so many days of his sensei bringing him a basket of fruit to eat had long since dispelled any notions of anonymity. Naruto closed his eyes again and began to drift off. Sometime later, it could have been an hour, it could have been 6, there was a tug on his right leg again. He didn't bother to open his eyes, and even if he had been so inclined, he doubted he could have. He just felt so tired. For the first time in his life, it was as if his boundless energy had abandoned him. He felt himself fall backwards, and thought vaguely that he might be falling, and then he landed softly on the inviting familiarity of his mattress. Kakashi had brought him to his room, to his bed, and had laid him there as gently as he could. How thoughtful, he wondered absently. A hand grabbed his right leg and lifted it, slipping his sandal from his foot, then gently lowered it again. The hand grabbed his left leg next, lifting it, too, then slipped his other sandal off his left foot, before setting that leg back down, as well. It was the kind of thing a parent might do for their child, and that thought sent a cold, lonely chill through Naruto, down to his very core. It was a familiar ache, the one that struck him. Though Iruka and Kakashi and all his friends had become like a family to him, he had always longed for his parents, for the people who had brought him into the world and loved him so much that they would sacrifice their lives for him. He had often imagined their faces, perhaps he had inherited his mother's blonde hair, but the spikiness had come from his father. Maybe he had his father's eyes, but his mother's nose and chin. Maybe both his parents had his unusually bright blue eyes, but his father's hair was brown and his mother had given him his blonde. Whatever faces he gave them, there was always one thing in common. They always had the biggest smiles on their faces, and those smiles were always directed at him. He imagined them smiling at him when he got up in the morning, when he had graduated from the academy, and waiting for him when he got home. He imagined them smiling as he regaled them with a story about his latest mission, and they would always be interested, even if it was a routine D rank. Even if it was just capturing Tora. He imagined their voices, too. He imagined his father's voice as a smooth tenor, kind of like Kakashi's, but a bit lighter. His mother's he thought of as a lilting soprano, though it could go higher when she screamed, as she naturally would every time he got in trouble. His father, of course, would just sit there and try not to laugh, probably hiding behind a newspaper or a book, or covering his mouth with his hand. But no matter what, they would always love him. He wished for that more than anything, that his parents really had sacrificed themselves for him, like the old man had told him, and that they hadn't abandoned him because they didn't want him. So, as Kakashi left and closed the door behind him, Naruto imagined his parents, smiling and telling him tenderly that they loved him, and drifted off to sleep with their voices whispering in his ear. Naruto rubbed his eyes and slowly stood up. His sandal sunk in the snow, but no feeling of coldness reached him as the white fuzz buried his toes. He looked around, only to discover he had once more returned to the world of Reincarnation. He blinked and wondered just why he was back. "You're here," the dragon's voice said calmly, swerving its long body around him. It twisted until it was looking him in the eyes, its lower body coiled around his feet and legs. "Tell me, child, do you know why you're here?" "No," Naruto started, shaking his head. His tongue froze mid-motion as images flashed through his mind and in front of his eyes, reminding him of what he'd done. His glowing white hand resting on Hinata's chest, Reincarnation hovering over his shoulder, his palm gliding over her smooth arms, and falling back into unconsciousness. That energy, Naruto began slowly, his mind working a mile a minute. What was it? It wasn't chakra. Good, the dragon cooed, its eyes narrowing slightly. You've started to become more observant. The clarity with which you perceive things is growing, sharpening. You've started down the path of a true shinobi. Reincarnation moved closer, until its snout was mere inches from his face. The two thin, long, fleshy feelers beneath its nostrils wavered in a non-existent wind as it spoke. As you well know, chakra is made of physical and spiritual energy blended together, but did you know that you could separate those energies and use them individually? Naruto's eyes widened as he slowly shook his head. Reincarnation continued, chakra is composed of the physical energy and the spiritual energy, Rei-ryoku. Your body mixes the two automatically, which creates chakra, and that chakra is what keeps you alive. Even if you have a monstrous amount of Rei-ryoku, if it does not mix and form chakra, you will die. Rei-ryoku, or spirit energy, is what allows chakra to be channeled for jutsu. By itself, Rei-Ryoku has several uses that can be helpful to the life of a shinobi. The easiest example was how you healed that girl of such life-threatening injuries. Beyond that, Rei-Ryoku can be used to form attacks and the like with which you can defeat your enemies. When it is not mixed into chakra, Rei-Ryoku is incapable of molding the elements. A normal shinobi might have a 3:2 or 5:3 ratio of physical and spiritual energy, and he must train to achieve a closer balance. A shinobi who can reach a perfect 1:1 ratio need not have a monstrous amount of chakra to be an extremely powerful ninja. Most, however, only reach a 1.5:1 ratio. A kunoichi, by contrast, tends to have a 3:4 ratio, and the fact that they have more Rei-Ryoku gives them better control of their chakra. For a kunoichi, it is much easier to have incredible chakra control. However, Maru stressed the word. You, Naruto, as a result of the Kyuubi, have a 1:6 ratio of physical and spiritual energy. You have so much excess Rei-Ryoku that your body, no matter how hard it tries, cannot compensate. It tries desperately to make more physical energy to match your Rei-Ryoku, but the rate at which your Rei-Ryoku increases is monstrous. Your chakra continues to grow and expand, elongating your lifespan, but so does your Rei-Ryoku. The imbalance makes it incredibly difficult to control. And so, Naruto, you have an enormous amount Rei-Ryoku just simmering beneath the surface, ever growing and ever waiting, untouched and unused. I guess I sorta get what you're saying, Maru. Naruto started quietly, a confused frown on his face, but what's the point of telling me? I mean, I suppose it might make it easier to train if I know what's wrong and what I need to do, but I don't know how to manipulate Rei-Ryoku, so how's it going to help me? Maru grinned, baring his large, sharp teeth. Quite simple, actually. You may not know how, but that does not mean you are incapable of learning. Naruto's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, a ghost of a grin stretching at his lips. You mean? The dragon's grin widened. Tomorrow, you will seek out that white-haired teacher of yours and have him teach you during the afternoons. In the mornings, from dawn's first light till the sun has reached its midday zenith, I will be teaching you to mold and use your Rei-Ryoku as a weapon. Really? Naruto asked excitedly, his eyes sparkling as the dragon nodded. He thrust his arms into the air, his own grin threatening to split his face. Yatta! This is going to be so cool. Wait! He refocused back onto the dragon still coiled around his lower body. Does this stuff require hand seals? As Maru shook his head, Naruto leapt into the air, whooping loudly. He laughed excitedly. All right. I'm gonna be an awesome ninja. Huh? Take that, Sasuke. You can't copy my jutsu, because they don't use hand seals. Naruto grunted as the dragon knocked him to the ground with its tail, hitting the earth face first and making an imprint in the snow. The dragon sighed, more to himself than anything. Good grief. I don't think I could have taken much more of that. As the Naruto stood, rubbing his head, the dragon leveled a glare at him. You must learn to contain your excitement or else nothing I teach you will help. Shinobi are silent and cunning. You are beginning to understand and apply this concept, but you must control such loud and annoying impulses. Naruto nodded, thoroughly cowed. Maru cooed. Good. Now, the dragon swiveled away, leaving Naruto to stand alone as it faced him. Your training begins immediately. Naruto woke up especially early the day after the preliminaries, dressed quickly, had a single bowl of ramen, much less than usual, read Kakashi's note, which explained in remarkable detail how the finals were set up and who was fighting who, and set out to begin his day. The first thing he did after locking his apartment door was seek out Sasuke and Hinata. He didn't have much luck. Under different circumstances, he would have gone to Kakashi to find out where they were, but Kakashi wasn't anywhere to be found. He wasn't at home in his apartment, he wasn't at Ichiraku, where Naruto stopped to eat another bowl of ramen, he wasn't at the Dango shop, or the Memorial Stone, or even at the Hokage's office. For all intents and purposes, Hatake Kakashi had vanished from the face of the earth. So, Naruto decided, he would have to find Sasuke and Hinata by himself. Piece of cake, he thought. How hard could it be to find two clan heirs in Konoha? It wouldn't take him more than half an hour, tops. It would probably be even faster if he did it like Sakura would tell him to, and Sakura would probably tell him to ask around because you never know what people on the street hear. So Naruto went around the village, asking the people who would actually talk to him and eavesdropping on those who wouldn't. Half an hour passed, then an hour, then 2. After 3 hours, Naruto gave a frustrated growl and gave up on Sakura's method. He turned on his heel and stalked back towards the hospital, the first place he normally would have looked. He felt like an idiot. If he had bothered to do things the way he normally did instead of trying to be smart and use Sakura's methods, he would have accomplished his goal hours earlier. The hospital was a 5-minute run from his apartment. He could have been done hours ago if he'd just done things his own way. Finally, after 3 hours of searching for Hinata and Sasuke, Naruto walked through the glass doors of the hospital. He walked up to the receptionist's desk and asked for the room numbers belonging to the 2 people that he wanted to visit. The reception he got wasn't what he was expecting. What? He demanded angrily. What do you mean? Why not? They're here, aren't they? I'm sorry, she told him, only sounding half apologetic, but Hyuga-sama is still unconscious and Sasuke-sama has been forbidden from having any visitors at all. Fine. I can't visit Sasuke. At least let me visit. His voice softened. At least let me visit Hinata-chan. Please let it work, he pleaded silently. The tender voice technique wasn't something he employed very often, but it worked best against older women, mothers and nurses and shop owners in their mid-30s or early 40s. It worked pretty well with women in their mid to late 20s, too, and the receptionist in front of him fit that category perfectly. The nurse blinked, then sighed. Look, kid, I'd like to let you see her, but I'm not allowed. Why not? Naruto demanded vehemently. Why can't I visit Hinata-chan? The nurse opened her mouth to reply, but Naruto didn't give her the chance. She's a patient, just like anybody else, and I know for a fact that she's not in critical condition. Why would they forbid me from visiting her, huh? Afraid I'll taint the beautiful Hinata-sama? Is that it? He slammed his fists down on the desk. Well, I'm not going to sit here and take this. He declared loudly. I'm going to find Hinata-chan even if I have to spend the whole day just looking for. Naruto-kun, a voice called calmly, this is a hospital. You're supposed to be quiet. Oh. Naruto spun around, instantly brightening. Kakashi-sensei. Listen, there's something I wanted to ask you. Kakashi held up a hand, stopping whatever Naruto had been about to say. I know what you're going to ask and I'm sorry, but I can't train you. Naruto froze, his eyes wide and a disappointed frown on his face. His lips were parted in mid-word. He felt betrayed. Just the day previous, Kakashi had carried him home piggyback style and tucked him into bed. And now he was being pushed to the side. Was he not important enough? Was the previous day a one-time sympathy thing? Kakashi sighed. Look, Naruto-kun, he started, were things so easy, I'd love to spend the next month training you. Unfortunately, not only am I completely inept at Kenjutsu, I have to prepare Sasuke for his match against Gaara. The hurt and feeling of betrayal froze quickly into the clear, frigid anger that he was rapidly becoming familiar with. His insides felt as though they had been dipped into ice water. You're training Sasuke? Naruto asked coldly. Why the hell can't you train me? I'd love to, Naruto-kun, Kakashi stated, placing his hands on Naruto's shoulders. Naruto stiffened, but Kakashi seemed to ignore it. Now that you have such a powerful ice-type ability, I could show you some really awesome Suiton jutsu. The only problem is your opponent is Neji, a leaf ninja. He's got a rather calm head on his shoulders and he's not too far beyond you. Win or lose, nobody's dying. Kakashi sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Gaara, though, is totally unstable. I have to prepare Sasuke for a fight against him that I'm not entirely sure he could even win. You, on the other hand, would be a pretty good match-up. The cold anger thawed a bit, it was replaced with a thrill of pleasant surprise. Kakashi did not often hand out praise to his students, not even Sasuke. Why? Naruto asked, honestly curious. Kakashi thought he could take down Gaara? Boy, was that an ego boost. Higher in Maru, Kakashi stated, as if that explained everything. If you could use him to get Gaara's sand wet, he'd have a much harder time using it against you, let alone defending. Wet sand is heavier and slower than dry. That would give you an amazing advantage and I have very few doubts that you'd fail to capitalize on it. Then why can't you? Naruto began, his voice something of a whine. Look, Naruto-kun, Kakashi interrupted, holding out a scroll. This is a jutsu scroll. I wrote it myself, along with several others, last night. On it is Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. I found you an instructor to be my replacement and he's going to teach you chakra control. Whenever he feels you've gained enough control, he'll give you another, much more powerful Suiton Jutsu scroll. Naruto nodded, his eyes wide. It wasn't exactly the training he'd been looking for, but even a substitute was better than no teacher at all. His control sucked horribly, he knew that, and it had become much worse after that freak from grass had sealed off the demon fox. Yet, he was stronger because of that freak's little trick. Had the Ninetales not been blocked off from him, he doubted he would have found Reincarnation any time soon. If there was one thing good to come of that meeting, Reincarnation was it. Kakashi-san, Naruto looked towards the voice, only to find a man he easily recognized. Naruto's brain sputtered into motion, added 1 and 1 to get 2, and a bit of dread filled him as he realized just who Kakashi's replacement was going to be. Ah, Ibisu-san, Kakashi nodded. I was just explaining things to Naruto. Listen, did you get those scrolls? Hi, Ibisu nodded, adjusting his sunglasses slightly. As per your instructions, I'll give him 1 Suiton scroll whenever I feel he has enough control to perform the jutsu inside effectively. He's going to teach me? Naruto asked numbly, disbelief tainting his voice. The closet pervert? Oh. Kakashi smiled at him. So you know each other? This makes things easier. Know each other? Naruto echoed hollowly. I beat this guy in 5 seconds, with 2 jutsu. Really? Kakashi asked with obviously feigned interest. Ah. Ibisu seemed to teleport next to Naruto, clasping his hand over the boy's mouth. He's just kidding, right, Naruto-kun? Naruto glared. He really wasn't fond of people touching him unbidden, too many bad memories. Oh, Haku, he thought mournfully. I may not be a great fighter, the man hissed at him, but I'm an elite tutor. Teaching is my specialty. I can teach you things that'd make Sasuke-san's head spin. Naruto's eyes widened, then he nodded enthusiastically. Ibisu smiled disarmingly. We'll be fine, Kakashi-san. See you later. Before Naruto knew what was happening, he felt something tug on him like a lasso around his waist and the hospital room vanished. Naruto couldn't help but stare. His eyebrow gave a twitch. Steam rose into the air as tiny wisps of vapor, slowly disappearing into the atmosphere. Water sloshed gently against the rocks that contained it, but not one drop escaped the confines of the natural pool. Even several feet away, Naruto could feel the heat radiating from the pond. A visible haze distorted the air above it. Despite the inviting atmosphere, Naruto had to wonder why he was there. He was supposed to be training, wasn't he? That had been the impression he'd gotten when Ibisu had promised to teach him things that would wow even Sasuke. And the first thing the elite teacher had done was make him read Kakashi's scroll. So why were they here, standing in front of a hot spring, an onsen, next to a wall? A wall behind which he could hear many giggling girls as they barked away their daily worries? Any closet pervert? Naruto asked, frowning. He ignored Ibisu's sputtered denial and pointed one finger at the hot spring. Why are we here? The first thing we're going to do is test you, Naruto-kun, a pink-cheeked Ibisu told him. Since you are learning Suiton Jutsu, you are going to need a source of water. What I want you to do, Naruto-kun, is produce exactly 5 Mizu Bunshin. You have 2 tries. Nodding, Naruto stepped next to the hot spring and focused his chakra, his hands in a seal. He cried, Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Around him, 7 water clones sprung into existence, each an identical copy of the original. 7, not 5. Frowning, he dispersed them all, watching as they splashed back into water and made several puddles on the ground. Focusing again, he added less chakra than the first time, Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 water clones appeared this time. Naruto's frustrated frown grew as he realized just how horrible his chakra control had to be. As his 2 doppelgangers splashed to the ground, Ibisu walked towards him. Since it seems that your control is severely lacking, Ibisu said in a lecturing tone, we'll have to rectify the problem. What you're going to be doing, Naruto-kun, is walking on water. Naruto stared at him for a second, momentarily speechless. What? Kakashi-san has told me that you already know the tree climbing exercise, Ibisu stated, proudly walking out onto the hot spring. This is the next step up. Try it for yourself. Tentatively, with Reincarnation hissing instructions into his ear, Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and walked out onto the surface of the heated pond only to plummet straight to the bottom. Yowling painfully, Naruto jumped from the pool like a speeding rocket and landed straight up on the ground. His skin had turned lobster red. As the burning sensation rippling across his flesh faded away, he set his sword down and mumbled an apology to the dragon for letting that happen. Steel and water didn't mix very well, and though Naruto was aware that Reincarnation was no ordinary blade, he didn't want to risk letting his precious weapon and companion rust. That was Sword Care 101, and it didn't take a genius to figure it out. Taking off his orange jacket, Naruto channeled chakra again and took a slow step out onto the surface. It stayed, and he smiled, confidently putting his other foot forward as he began to walk atop the water. On that second step, however, he once more fell straight into the water. Screaming painfully as the water burned him, he leapt up from it and landed once more on dry land. He hissed as the cool air rubbed roughly against his sensitive skin and waited for it to turn back to its pale pink. It only took a few seconds, but during that time, Hiranmaru seized the opportunity to chastise him for being so hasty. "Take it slowly," the dragon told him. "Speed will earn you nothing in the end. Patience is the driving force behind success. Remember, Naruto, think first. Never take action without a measure of thought." Forcing himself into a state of calm, Naruto focused his chakra once again and stepped out onto the water. His feet held as he walked steadily towards his temporary tutor, confident that he had this new skill down. Barely a second later, he fell into the hot water again, crying his anger and pain to the sky. Ibisu shook his head amusedly. Naruto glared balefully at his teacher as he climbed out of the water, but Ibisu was looking elsewhere, at the fence opposite their section. Naruto looked, too, and saw immediately what had caught his teacher's notice. There was an old man with long white hair staring through a small hole in the fence, giggling like a schoolgirl all the while. There could be no doubt about what he was doing. He was peeping. Naruto saw Ibisu scowl and fix his glasses out of the corner of his eye. "I don't know who you are," Ibisu began quietly, "but I will not allow such shameful and dishonorable behavior." Ibisu rushed forward, his fiery, indignant gaze focused on the indecent man in front of him. But the pervert simply ignored him, still giggling, and Naruto could imagine the outcome. The old man was about to get flattened. Ibisu lifted his fist and cocked it back. Naruto just sat and watched. There was a puff of smoke and, too fast for Ibisu, and Naruto, who observed it all with numb surprise, a long tongue shot out and flung him away. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. "Be quiet," the older man said sternly, perched atop a large toad. "You don't want me to get caught, do you?" Ibisu did not respond. He was out cold. Naruto stared for a second, then felt anger bubbling up inside his chest and pointed furiously at the old man. "You idiot. Now what am I supposed to do?" Ibisu might not have been the best teacher, but he was still a teacher, and Naruto was still learning stuff from him. What good did he do lying unconscious on the ground? How could Naruto get better, good enough to beat Neji, without anyone to teach him? Naruto gestured jerkily to Ibisu, who had begun to drool stupidly. "This idiot was supposed to be supervising my training. But you knocked him out. Look! Look at what you did." "Tea is fine, mommy," Ibisu said goofily. "You always make it the best." "He was interfering with my research," the old man declared simply. "Research?" Naruto demanded incredulously. "You mean you're peeping?" "It was research," the old man insisted irately, gesturing wildly with his hands. His face quickly morphed into a self-satisfied grin, the sort Naruto knew people wore when they knew something he didn't, and the only sign of the old man's indignation was the twitch of his eyebrow. "I'm a writer, you see," he said. He fished a book with a familiar orange cover out of his vest. "Like this. Understand?" Naruto's mouth flapped soundlessly. He lifted a finger and pointed at the book in the old man's hand. That's Itcha Paradise. Aho! The old man crowed victoriously. "So you know this book? I guess it's become pretty famous. Kien know it?" Naruto squeaked. "That's the same dirty book Kakashi-sensei reads, you pervert." "Research? You were peeping so you could write more of that book." Naruto's voice must have carried farther than he'd thought, because there were several horrified screams and a great commotion from behind the wooden wall the old man had been peering through. No doubt, all the girls who had been bathing were scrambling to get out and cover themselves. The old man let out a sound like a mouse being trodden on, as though he had just been told that his entire life was a lie, and great big tears flowed down his cheeks. "Look what you've done!" he cried. "Now they all know I was peeping." Naruto crossed his arms. "Pervert," he stated flatly. "I'm not a pervert," the old man declared vehemently. "I'm a super pervert." He jabbed his thumb at his chest proudly. "That's not really something to be proud of," Naruto said quietly. But, Mommy, Ibisu mumbled into the cobblestones. I don't want to go to school today, which reminds me, Naruto thought. The ire in his belly ignited again, and he ignored Hirinmaru's hissed commands to calm down. He was not going to let this drop. But that's all beside the point. Naruto said angrily. That closet pervert was supposed to be training me. I mean, my chakra control's been bad enough since that snake freak in the second exam did his flaming fingers thing, but it's not going to get any better if I don't have anyone to train me. You better take responsibility for that. Snake freak? The old man echoed curiously. He walked forward, scratching his chin with a finger thoughtfully. What do you mean? Where did he hit you? Some guy in the second exam, Naruto tersely. He eyed the old man warily. He did this weird thing with his fingers, then hit me in the stomach. I see, the old man said pensively, rubbing his chin. Lift your shirt and channel some chakra. I think I have a solution. Yeah, right, was Naruto's first reaction, but he paused and gave it some thought. He definitely didn't have any reason to trust the man, true, but the guy was strong. He beat Ibisu with one shot, after all. Strong enough, in fact, that he could have killed Naruto easily without a second thought. So, Naruto decided, by virtue of the fact that he was still alive, he would trust this stranger, but only a little. Whatever, Naruto mumbled. He lifted his shirt and scrunched up his face, summoning chakra from the bottomless well in his gut. The old man leaned down and inspected the suddenly visible seal with squinted eyes, tilting his head now and then and muttering under his breath to himself. Naruto fidgeted, a little uneasy. Who was this stranger? All right, the man said, straightening as his fingers began to glow. This should do it. He thrust his fingers forward and into Naruto's stomach, pressing into the foreign swirl marks and tearing loose a breathless gasp. Gogyo Kane! The old man called. After a second, he pulled his hand back to look at his work. The five-pronged seal that had overlapped the original seal faded away into nothingness. He grinned proudly. There. I hit some pressure points to help you relax. Now try the water walking skill. Shooting the old man a wary look, but still having no reason to distrust him, Naruto took a delicate step onto the water. When it held, he took another step, then another, and he didn't fall in. Confident from his success, he walked faster and faster until he was running around the small spring. He nearly yelled excitedly when he didn't fall in at all. The old man started to walk away, probably thinking he would slip past Naruto's notice. He had no such luck. Hey, Naruto shouted, don't think you're off the hook. This guy was supposed to be my teacher. He gestured again to Ibisu. You knocked him out, so now you're going to have to fill that role. No way. The old man yelled back. I, Jiraiya the Gama Senin, don't have time to babysit a brat like you. Besides, you already learned what he was teaching you. Nah. Naruto called back, forming a hand seal. 5 Mizu Bunshin stood around him. He was supposed to teach me some really cool Suetun jutsu whenever my control was good enough. It was supposed to be totally kick-ass. Fine. Jiraiya said loudly. He sped through hand seals. You want a Suetun jutsu? Suetun, Suiryuden. A dragon rose up from the hot spring behind Naruto, who panicked as it leered down at him. Several images flashed through his brain of Kakashi and Zabuza squaring off over a lake, summoning dragons of water and great swirling vortexes, techniques that could wipe out an entire fleet of warships. He shook himself free of the memories and rushed to the shore, unsheathing his sword as the water dragon barreled towards him. He stabbed it forwards, into the dragon's mouth as he cried, Soten Nizace, Hirinmaru. The dragon froze, starting at the mouth and snout and spreading quickly to the rest of its body until it was a single solid mass of ice. Naruto twisted his katana, and the dragon cracked and splintered like a broken mirror, then shattered into thousands of pieces and plopped bit by bit into the hot spring with several large splashes. Naruto sheathed his sword with a newly familiar grace as the adrenaline burst began to fade. When his breathing had calmed back down, Naruto spun to face the old man. He called himself Jiraiya, right? And pointed at him furiously. Are you insane? He demanded loudly. That thing could have killed me. Now you really owe me. Yeah, right. Jiraiya shot back. That thing only had enough chakra to knock you off your feet. The worst you would have gotten was a bump on that thick skull of yours and a few bruises on your ass. Stop being a drama queen. Oh, hell no, Naruto thought. He did not just call me a drama queen, says the porno writer. He retorted. The bowl is calling the kettle black. It's pot. The old man corrected. The pot calling the kettle black, not the bowl. Naruto fought down a blush. It wasn't the first time he'd made a mistake like that. Yeah, well, you still owe me. You've got to train me. Like hell I do. You knocked out my teacher and then tried to kill me. You owe me at least 2 really awesome jutsu. As if. Why should I train a puny little punk like you? I only train the really good guys, the kind you see in history books, who are so powerful that even the mention of their very names makes people quiver in awe and fear. That's the kind of people I, Jiraiya, sage of the toads of Mount Myaboku, train. Then there's no reason for you not to train me. Naruto jabbed his thumb at himself. Because I'm going to be the best Hokage ever. Even greater than the 4th. Oh, really? Jiraiya asked with sudden interest. Naruto hesitated a little at the sudden mood change as the old man grinned. You're going to surpass the 4th Hokage, are you? That's right. Naruto said, though his confidence was wavering a bit. What was this old guy playing at? I'm going to be Hokage. I'll be better than any other before, and any to come after. Because I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Well, all right, then. Jiraiya stood tall and put his hands on his hips. A superior grin was pulling at the corners of his lips. I think I'll train you after all, kid. Congratulations, the Honorable Jiraiya-sama is now your teacher. Naruto blinked. Really? He asked skeptically. Yeah, Jiraiya said, crossing his arms. After all, as one of the Senin, I know more about Suiton than anyone in this village, save the Hokage. You do? Naruto's face split into a large grin. If this guy really knew more about Suiton than Kakashi, then he'd just hit the jackpot. Yeah, the old man said confidently, closing his eyes and nodding. Now, come on. Let's take this to a more appropriate place, one with lots more water. Grinning, Naruto pumped his fist victoriously. Yes! He shouted to himself. He'd just landed a teacher that had beaten Ibisu with a single attack. And now this guy was going to teach him some really kick-ass Suiton jutsu. Naruto took off down the street, mentally mapping out the areas he knew to have the most water. There was that pond in the one training ground, and the river, and well, those were the only ones he knew. He wasn't exactly an expert on Konoha's geography, he'd either skipped or slept through those classes in the academy, and D ranks didn't really take you that far, so wait. Where's Senin? He skidded to a halt and turned to look back at where he'd been standing a few minutes before. There, in the exact same pose, nodding proudly to himself and grinning broadly, was the man who called himself Jiraiya. Naruto blinked and cocked his head to the side curiously. What's he waiting for? He wondered. He cupped his hands over his mouth. Hey, Senin! He called. Jiraiya froze and opened his eyes. He looked at Naruto, blinked, then looked back to where Naruto had been standing, blinked again, then looked back at Naruto. Naruto waved. Come on, let's go. The roar of rushing water pounded into his ears as its sweet scent, fresh and ripe, permeated his nostrils. The grass that grew just beyond its rocky borders tickled his bare toes with every step, bending and swaying with the gentle wind that tousled his spiky hair. He grinned, and the excitement of training rushed through him. Jiraiya had directed him to a river that fed a waterfall which emptied into a rather shallow pond, one that girls seemed to enjoy cooling off in during the hotter seasons. Naruto could imagine why Jiraiya was so fond of it. All those young girls, all in their late teens and early 20s, all in nothing more than a swimsuit, it was pervert heaven. Still, the old man was going to teach him, so he wasn't going to complain too much. The river itself was not particularly big, but that had more to do with the season. During the late spring, summer, and autumn, it shrunk and exposed the outer edges of its rocky bed. It was only during the winter and early spring, when the short bursts of snow fell, melted, and fed it, that the river grew to its full size and pounded down with its full might. Right! Jiraiya clapped his hands together. I've already showed you the hand seals, so let's see how good you are at Suiryuden. UN. Naruto nodded, flashing through hand signs numbering in the dozens. He stopped on Bird, watching as the river churned unnaturally. A beast's head began to form, sucking the water from its surroundings. Suiton, Suiryuden no Jutsu. A winding dragon leapt from the water, twisting and turning in the air before it crashed back down. The river tossed restlessly, then leveled out and returned to normal, as if nothing had even happened. Jiraiya nodded, satisfied. Good. Good. Now, let's try it while you're walking on the river. Nodding, Naruto took a step out onto the water and stood atop it without trouble, and it was so much easier now. Whatever that Jiraiya guy had done, it certainly worked. The river around his feet rippled slightly, but showed no sign of letting him fall through. Slowly, he walked to the center, making sure that the current wouldn't push him downstream. With a great deal more concentration, he went through the hand seals again, calling, Suetun, Suiryuden. The water dragon formed in front of him much more slowly than it had the first time, its gaping more snarling silently. It jumped from the river surface as a coiling serpentine mass and charged towards an imaginary enemy Naruto's mind's eye had conjured, swallowed its non-existent target, then sunk back into the water and disappeared. All right, the elder man muttered. Naruto was not quite satisfied. The second one had taken much longer than the first. Again. Naruto went through the hand seals once more, much faster than the second time. It was becoming easier, he realized, the more he practiced. The hand seals were more and more familiar each go. The dragon rose for a third time, much faster than either the first or second attempt. With a silent roar, it dove into the river again a great distance away. The splash it caused was loud and large, throwing water up and out several feet and sending Naruto swaying as he attempted to keep his feet through the sudden wave that washed his way. Good, Jiraiya nodded. Now we're ready to move on to the next thing I have to teach you, Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Naruto grinned eagerly and had gone to Jiraiya's side before he'd even finished. Clearing his throat, Jiraiya continued in a lecturing tone. Naruto had known Iruka for this technique, however, you're going to need more than your normal amount of chakra. You felt your secondary chakra, right? That's what you're going to have to use. So Jiraiya knew about the Nine Tails, too. Naruto wasn't surprised. It seemed anymore that the only ones who didn't know were kids his own age and those younger. Everyone else knew the secret: Iruka, Kakashi, Jiraiya, Ibisu, Iame and Tucci, and every owner of a restaurant or store. Now, Jiraiya was telling him to use the Kyuubi's chakra. He'd thought it was something else, at first, on the bridge with Haku, during the second exam with that snake freak, and then he'd assumed it was Hyarin-Maru. After using Hyarin-Maru, though, really using him, and discovering an entirely different feel, Naruto had come to the only remaining conclusion: the red chakra that had surged through him only twice before was the Nine Tails chakra. And after realizing that, he made the decision not to use it. Naruto shook his head. Sorry, Senin, but I'm not going to use Fluffy's power. If I use it like you're suggesting, then I'll become dependent on it, and my own power will grow weak. I'm not going to call on Kyuubi's chakra. What? Jiraiya asked incredulously, his expression surprised. Who taught you that? It's ridiculous. Why have all that power locked away if you're not going to use it? And Naruto felt that anger come back, calmer, tamer, less cold, but still there. He knew that using the Kyuubi's chakra made him more powerful, and he knew that it could increase his strength quite a bit. But the reminder of why he had it was with him always, and every time he was tempted to draw on it, he remembered how he had gotten the Kyuubi. He remembered that his parents had sacrificed themselves to protect him from it, and that the bijou itself was in some way responsible for just about everything that had gone wrong in his life from the day he was born. But more than that, he didn't want to rely on it. He didn't want to need to turn to the Nine Tails every time things got a little difficult. He didn't want to have a crutch, a cheat to make things easier, like Sasuke's Sharingan or Kiba's sense of smell. He wanted to be like Lee and earn everything he got. Stand on your own 2 feet, Hyarin-Maru had told him the night before. The instant you rely on another's power, your own power becomes paltry and insignificant. Accept help when it is offered, but hone your own strength to a razor's edge. If your own power is great, then the moment yours is joined with another's, you shall become unstoppable. So when he looked up into Jiraiya's eyes, his back was straight and his will was made of iron. You don't need it, Naruto said with an uncharacteristic coldness. You don't need a second chakra to summon the toads, right? Why should I rely on the creature that made my life miserable to do what you can do all by yourself? I'm not going to use the Kyuubi's chakra. All right, Jiraiya sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. If you're that serious about it, I guess we can just use your normal chakra. If we can build it up high enough, you won't need the fox's chakra. Naruto nodded, then pasted a broad, cheery smile on his face to show that there were no hard feelings. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head quizzically, shrugged, then bit his thumb and went through hand seals. Right. First, I'll show you how. He thrust his palm to the ground and several chains of kanji spread over the rocks beneath his feet. There was a puff of smoke and standing beneath Jiraiya was a large toad slightly taller than the man himself. In its mouth was a scroll and the toad's tongue unrolled to drop it on the ground. Write your name in blood, like those written before you, Jiraiya commanded as Naruto unraveled the scroll. The seals are boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. In order to summon, you must spread a little blood on the hand you used to sign your name on the scroll. Naruto looked over the names written in blood on the large scroll, recognizing only a few of them. Jiraiya's was easy to see, written in large and fancy penmanship. Show off, he muttered. To the right were several unfamiliar names, each one older, more faded, and more archaic than the last. To the left of the Gamma Senings, though, was a name that Naruto had memorized a long time ago, Namake's Minato. It was the fourth Hokage. That was all the endorsement he needed. Naruto couldn't help the grin that split his face as he bit into his right thumb, going just deep enough to draw blood. Carefully, he signed his name on the scroll using that blood, then dabbed each of his fingers with it. He pressed the tips of the fingers on his right hand against the thick rice paper, knowing that they would leave an impression. Naruto rolled to scroll back up, watching as the toad pulled it back into its mouth and disappeared. Jiraiya fell back to the ground with a soft clatter, hands on his hips as he looked at him expectantly. Nodding, Naruto bit his thumb and swiped it over his right palm, flashing through the hand seals required. He thrust his hand down and spider-web chains of kanji spread from the point of contact. There was a puff of smoke but the wind blew it away quickly. As it cleared, Jiraiya looked, with a mildly surprised expression painted across his face, as Naruto appeared from within it, riding atop a toad as tall as himself. Jiraiya scratched his chin absent-mindedly. Naruto felt a quick swell of warm pride. He'd clearly exceeded Jiraiya's expectations. A grin stretched across Jiraiya's face and he began to giggle slightly. Naruto paused and his brow furrowed worriedly. Every muscle in his body tensed. His fight-or-flight instincts kicked into hyperdrive, with good reason. The look on Jiraiya's face and the insane giggle bubbling out of his mouth belonged to a man who had just become a billionaire, and that couldn't be a good sign. He supposed he must have done a lot better than he'd thought he had. He couldn't imagine what was so special about his summoning. The toad he sat on was only about as tall as Jiraiya himself. It wasn't like he'd summoned the boss on his first try, though that would have been a huge accomplishment. Naruto only relaxed when Jiraiya did, and didn't ask what had just happened. He settled instead for just pretending it hadn't happened at all. Jiraiya didn't seem like he was going to share what exactly had set him off, either, so Naruto didn't press it. He snapped the tenuous string holding the toad in place beneath him and landed deftly on his feet after it vanished, then waited for further instructions. "All right," Jiraiya said, still grinning broadly, "that's enough for today." "Eh?" Naruto asked incredulously. "But I've got so much energy left. I should be training until I drop. Come on, teach me another jutsu. A really powerful one. Like the strongest one you know. Doesn't matter if it's Suiton or not. Just show me your strongest technique." Jiraiya barked out a laugh. "My strongest technique? Kid, you're really something. I've only just started training you and you want to see my strongest technique? Bwahava. You're a riot." Naruto frowned, then set his fingers into a seal. An instant later, he took on the form of a buxom blonde girl with curves most men would call delicious. "Please, Jiraiya-sama?" Naruto said meekly, pushing her fingers together. On the inside, Naruto balked, but he'd pulled this act several times before. "I'd be ever so grateful." Jiraiya let out a goofy sound somewhere between a sigh and a moan, staring rapturously, then shook himself and stood up straight. "No, no, 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 no," he said. His head was tossing back and forth so violently that Naruto considered that it might actually be spinning. "That won't work on me. I am the great Jiraiya-sama." Naruto scowled again, then set his newly female fingers into another hand seal. An instant later, there were a total of 20 blonde bombshells standing nude before Jiraiya and covered only by their own strategically placed hands. "Please, Jiraiya-sama?" They all asked at once. With practiced simultaneity, they fidgeted a little with fake uncertainty. "We'll let you take a quick peek." Jiraiya's face turned beet red, and then he was cackling the most perverted laugh Naruto had ever heard. "All right. he said with far too much excitement. But just for you. Naruto grinned on the inside, and would later decide that it was incredibly creepy just how easy it was for him to seduce other men when he disguised himself as a girl. Jiraiya sped through a set of hand seals. Here we go, Ma and Pa. Sorry to call on you like this, but it's time to show off. There was a puff of smoke that obscured Jiraiya in his entirety, and Naruto and all his female clones stared with bated breath into the silence. Then, Jiraiya! A croaky female voice called irately. What's the meaning of this? I was just in the middle of trying a new recipe for my lily pad stew. The sun rose over the easterly trees, painting the sky in brilliant tones of red, orange, yellow, and pink. The dark, navy blue sky steadily turned to a delicate azure, decorated with puffy white clouds. The trill of morning birds lilted in the air, singing a serenade of peace to the world. Few were awake, save for those dedicated to their training, despite their questionable sanity. Gari-sensei! A voice called in the distance. Lee! Came the answer. Naruto shook his head in amazement. Despite losing the use of his left arm and leg, Lee was still so damn hyper. Focus, Naruto told himself calmly. He could feel Hirinmaru's eyes on the back of his head. Focus the energy. Circulate it to your hand, gathering it within the palm and fingers. Let it grow. Pure spirit energy spiraled up his body and flowed freely through his limbs. It rose through him, from the tips of his toes all the way up to the roots of his hair. The feeling was invigorating and he felt invincible once more, as though nothing earthly could touch him, just as he had in the forest. It was as though he existed on a higher plane and only the gods themselves could strike him down. He breathed in and the universe was at his every beck and call. As the energy rushed through his cells and molecules, he grasped for it, preparing to shape it for its purpose. It was thinner than chakra, ethereal and elusive, and slipped from his fingers several times, gliding over his mental palms like sand over the desert. It would not be tamed and Naruto began to feel the slight chill in the air as it took on a mind of its own. Concentrating, Naruto grabbed it and refused to let go. He imagined a long tube and imagined that it was sucking all of the energy up into it. It stuck this time and he opened his shining eyes, calmly aiming his hand at a tree. With but a slight push, the energy rushed up his imaginary tube and gathered as he told it to in the palm of his hand. Tonelessly, he said, Heido no Sanjusen, so Katsui. Path of Destruction 33, Blue Fire, crashed down. A violent discharge was the only warning that Naruto had before the ball of blue power leapt from his hand, soaring like a flash of azure towards its target. The poor tree had no chance and neither did the 6 trees beside it or the dozen trees behind it. All 19 trees were incinerated by the blast, only a collection of scattered ashes remained. Wow, Naruto grinned, looking down at his normal fingers excitedly. There was the faintest hint of smoke wafting off them. That was amazing. And it was only number 33. Naruto grasped at the energy again, forming it in the tip of his right index finger, and said, now for number 4. The power gathered again, arcing over his body and through his arm, converging at his fingertip. He continued to push it towards that one point, waiting for the right amount to have gathered. He waited as it festered and grew and his finger began to glow brightly, sparking as if it knew its purpose. Finally, as the power reached an apex, he called, Heido no Yon, Byakurai. Path of Destruction 4, White Lightning. A bolt of white lightning leapt from his finger and lashed out at amazing speed, almost faster than he could see. It struck the tree he had been pointing at, blowing a wide hole straight through its large and thick trunk. Several trees behind, nearly a dozen by his count, suffered the same fate, creaking dangerously as their support faltered. With a crash, they all fell to the earth, never to bloom again. Do you see, Naruto-kun? Hirinmaru asked, locking gazes with him. The power of Reiryoku? Yeah, he said, or decorating his voice, it's awesome. You sure do know quite a bit about this kind of stuff, Hirinmaru. At this rate, I'll be Hokage before I know it. Indeed, the dragon commented amusedly. It turned its head away. That's enough practice for now. Let's move on. Have you finished your little project? I'm close, Naruto said, scratching his head sheepishly. I only saw that Sening's mode thingy once, though, so I'm still trying to figure a couple things out. It's all really confusing. I must congratulate you, Hirinmaru said, his voice filled with paternal praise. This idea was quite crafty and cunning. You have done well. Thanks, Naruto laughed happily. Senin said something about nature chakra, right? But I can't find anything like that, no matter how hard I look. So, I figure, if I can't find it, I'll keep looking, I promise, then I'll just have to use something else. Now, though, I kinda have to figure out what else I could use. Maru nodded. To come up with such a thing after seeing it only once is quite admirable. I have no doubt that you will succeed. Somehow, though he wasn't sure how, Naruto could tell that the dragon was looking at him out of the corner of its eye. When you do, I have quite an interesting skill to teach you. A shiver of anticipation traveled down Naruto's spine, raising tiny bumps of goose flesh all over his arms. He wasn't sure if the shiver of anticipation was one of eagerness or if it was an omen. But there was no mistaking the icy block of dread that had dropped into his stomach. Maru rarely called something interesting. He knew things that no ordinary creature could know. He saw things that Naruto himself missed. He had an intelligence that put even Kakashi and Shikamaru to shame. There were few things that he could possibly consider interesting, there were only curiosities, fleeting questions that took little effort to answer. If it was a technique he was teaching Naruto, he always made it seem insignificant to him, but very important to Naruto. He used all sorts of words and phrases to entice him into learning, but interesting had never been one of them. If he was using it to describe something, that something had to be beyond awesome. Naruto called Sasuke's fire jutsu cool. Maru informed him that there were much cooler techniques out there. Naruto called Rock Lee's speed and taijutsu awesome. Maru chastised him for admiring the boy's abilities when he could be working towards acquiring them for himself. Naruto thought Kakashi was one of the best. Maru assured him that there were better. So for Maru to call something interesting, it had to be beyond powerful. It had to be even more powerful than the destruction spells the dragon was teaching him to use. It had to be stronger than Kakashi's signature move. Now if only he could decide whether or not learning the technique itself would kill him. Naruto stood shakily, panting as sweat rolled down his cheeks and nose and into his blue eyes. His vision was starting to blur. The water around him churned as yet another dragon dissolved into it, splashing the riverbanks harshly. He fought to stay atop the surface as the sway of the resulting wave compromised his footing. Again! Came the command and Naruto obeyed. He flashed through the hand seals, stopping on bird and watching as the water in front of him swirled and rose to form a dragon. It seemed to roar as it jumped forwards at an invisible target. It crashed back into the river and sent the surface churning. He struggled to stay atop. After his success at summoning, Jiraiya had decided that it would be best to hammer out his skills in Suiton by making him practice till he dropped. Along with Suiryuden, the old man had taught him Daibakufu no Jutsu, Bakusui Shuha, and Suijin Heiki and had him practice them alongside it. The old man was determined to make him a Suiton master before the Chunin exam finals. For the 3 weeks he'd been training under the elder shinobi, he'd become quite proficient in water-style techniques. He had even learned to cut the longest of seal chains down to a short, swift series. Suiryuden, which was normally a whopping 64 hand seals, now required only 16. Jiraiya really knew his stuff, that's for sure. But Jiraiya wasn't the only one training him in jutsu. After Naruto had perfected several of the spells he'd been learning, Maru had started to have Naruto recreate jutsu he'd seen before. Specifically, he had Naruto recreate techniques that Haku had used during their battle on the bridge. So far, he'd managed to teach himself Haku Sensatsu Suisho, something he'd only caught a glimpse of during the fake hunter ninja skirmish with Sasuke, and how to perform certain jutsu using one-handed seals. Unfortunately, while Hayaten wasn't something that only Haku could use, the Makyu Hyoshu was a bloodline limit-related skill. He couldn't replicate it beyond forming the mirrors. Maru had also been trying to get Naruto to learn to form his chakra into chains. At first, Naruto hadn't really wanted to. What the hell was he going to do with chakra chains? But after Maru explained exactly what he could do with them, he also explained that they were a technique Naruto's mother had used to defend him from the Nine Tails. He might as well have told Naruto that he would be sworn in as Hokage for knowing how to make chakra chains. After that, he'd spent nearly 3 whole days focusing entirely upon learning to form them, though he'd only managed to make one so far, but not before he asked Maru how he could possibly know that Naruto's mother had used her chakra to make chains. The only answer he'd gotten was a cryptic statement about how Maru's memory was much longer and clearer than his. That's not to say that training was all Naruto did. He had visited Hinata several times since the preliminaries, more often than not stopping by the Yamanaka shop to buy some flowers for her. He wouldn't admit it to anyone, but he took a secret pleasure in seeing her blush every time he came in her room with a bouquet of azaleas and red and white carnations in his hands, though Ino giggled every time she arranged them for him, and had yet to explain what they actually symbolized. Whenever he tried to ask Hinata, she'd go red as a cherry and refuse to say. He'd tried to visit Sasuke once, only to find that his bed was completely empty, as if no one had ever slept in it. He'd been confused for a second, wondering if maybe Orochimaru had stolen the boy in his sleep, before he'd taken a better look at the scene of the supposed crime. There was no sign of a struggle and no sign of more than one person being involved in his rival's escape. He'd nearly grinned. Sasuke had left on his own. "All right," Jiraiya called, halting his training as his fingers moved together almost on reflex. "That's enough. I'd say you've got this down pretty well. You've got 5 days until the finals. Take that time to rest." Nodding, Naruto staggered over to the riverbank, collapsing onto his back as soon as his feet hit dry land. His breath came out in short pants and his eyelids drooped as the exhaustion set in. Jiraiya chuckled slightly. Naruto imagined Jiraiya must have been amused to find that Naruto actually had limits. He lifted his arms so he could reach out and wring his teacher's neck, but they had barely made it an inch off the ground before they flopped back down bonelessly. "I'll be back in half an hour," Jiraiya told him, kneeling next to Naruto's head. "If you're still lying here then, I'll take you home myself." In a puff of smoke, the man disappeared. Naruto sighed, rolling over onto his back to look up at the bright afternoon sky. He sighed again as his breathing began to even out and his body slowly regenerated the chakra he'd used up during his training. It had been intense, more so than any other training he'd ever done. "You have progressed well," a familiar voice told him as a smooth, reptilian body lied down next to his. "You've even almost finished that project of yours. Most impressive." "I suppose," Naruto sighed again. "I just feel like there's something missing. Like there's something more I need to learn. Something more that can make me stronger. And once I find what's missing, I can complete it. Once I find what's missing, I'll know what I have to do to finish my project. That's the feeling I get." The dragon lifted its head to look at him, a serious gleam in its eyes. "I guess it's time, then. Your instinct is pushing you forward." Naruto arched his eyebrow. "What? Time for what? What's it time for? What instinct?" "You'd best rest up," the dragon evaded his question. "Come back here tomorrow and manifest me into this world. I'm going to teach you that technique I promised." The dragon looked away. "Do not underestimate it. Normally, it takes years of training to achieve it and years more before it's been mastered sufficiently for use in battle," but the dragon gave its frightening parody of a grin. "We've never been normal, have we?" Once more, the block of icy dread dropped into Naruto's stomach and settled there uncomfortably. Yeah, he was in deep shit. The water was far more turbulent than it had been before, and its roar pounded against his ears. He might have something to do with that, he realized, considering how many Suiton jutsu he'd used here recently. The long grass rose over the sides of his sandals, tickling the calloused pads of his toes. The tangy scent of the water wafting from the roaring river stung his nostrils. He stepped carefully, almost hesitantly, over the hard stones, gathering his wits and courage about him. He was stepping into the situation blind. He didn't know what was going to happen, but his gut feeling told him it wasn't something good. It was supposed to be a new technique, but he could not help but feel as though he had just taken the first step into the gates of hell. Naruto closed his eyes and reached inside himself, ignoring the well of chakra that stormed up to meet him and diving further in, towards his inner world. He was stopped briefly by a swell of red chakra that offered itself up, vicious and tempting and powerful, but he shoved that aside as well. He grasped at the presence that was higher in Maru, wrapping intangible fingers around the dragon's body, and pulled with all of his strength up and out. There was a large puff of smoke as the sensation of vertigo flooded Naruto and he shot up into the air. His feet stood atop something hard yet soft and smooth yet scaly as a sea of icy azure invaded his vision. He felt his eyes widen to saucers as he realized the truth of the situation. He was standing atop a huge higher in Maru, one at least 100 times bigger than the one he knew. "So, you managed," the voice was deeper, but it was still familiar. "Always have I appeared before you, yet this one time you had to force me, you succeeded. I wonder, however, if you can manage the task I have set for you. I wonder if your instinct is strong enough." "Task?" Naruto asked confusedly. "What's this task?" "As you know, by calling out the correct command along with my name, you can merge your power with mine," the dragon told him. However, there is a level of power beyond that where you and I merge our powers much further. To accomplish this task, you must defeat me and claim my power for your own. You must subdue me. What? Naruto shouted in alarm. Defeat you? How? Don't worry, child, Maru placated, chuckling amusedly, this is not direct combat. All you must do to force my subjugation is overcome one challenge I will set for you. Challenge? Naruto asked tentatively, slightly hesitant. He firmed his resolve from rubber to iron. Okay. What's this challenge? You have 4 days left before your finals, the dragon said calmly. To achieve the next level of power, you must stay atop me for the next 72 hours straight. Do you accept this challenge? Of course. Naruto exclaimed, standing shakily. This is only one step on the road to Hokage. If I can accomplish this, I'll be that much closer to my dream. So be it, the dragon said solemnly. With a jerk, Maru threw himself to the ground and thrashed about in the river, and Naruto's challenge began. Jiraiya-sama is the one training you? Hinata squeaked. He's not that great, Naruto said, shrugging. I mean, sure, he knows his stuff, and yeah, I've learned a lot from him, but he's such a pervert. He even admitted to it. Naruto deepened his voice and did his best Jiraiya impression. I'm no ordinary pervert. I'm a super pervert. Gah ha 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 ha. Hinata's lips twitched and she smiled, but didn't quite laugh. So, what are you still doing here, anyway? Naruto asked. I mean, I thought they'd have released you by now. They've held you almost a month. I'd die if I had to eat hospital food that long. He minded gagging and dying, and she smiled again, and this time, a short, breathy laugh even slipped past her lips. But it was over too soon, and she was staring down at her hands, fiddling with her fingers. The doctors, she began quietly. They said, that they just wanted to make sure I was all right. I mean, after what happened. I did almost. She trailed off. Naruto slumped forward in his chair and looked away. He didn't want her to see his scowl. Neji, he said lowly. Please don't hurt him too badly. Hinata burst out suddenly. Naruto turned to her with wide, bewildered eyes, and she blushed and looked down again, playing with her fingers nervously. It's just Neji-san is suffering more than me. Neji-san is suffering because of our clan, and Hinata-chan, Naruto said with a sad smile, you're too nice. Her face flashed scarlet. I am not, no, I get it, he told her. You're a really good person, Hinata-chan. She blushed again and stole a sad glance at him when she thought he wasn't looking, and when she spoke again, it was whispered so quietly that he almost thought he'd imagined it. You are, too, Naruto-kun. He didn't have the chance to respond because that's when he felt it, an ominous killing intent, large enough to rival even that freak in the second exam. This particular intent, Reiatsu, Maru had explained, the manifestation of the spiritual energy into a tangible presence he had only felt once before, during the preliminaries. Sorry, Hinata-chan, gotta go. He said quickly, leaning down to peck her on the cheek, and if he'd been thinking about it, he would have realized that was the first time he'd kissed her. He was out the door and dashing down the hall before she could even raise her hand to wave goodbye. As he rounded the corner, another door burst open and Shikamaru was suddenly running beside him. He's probably facing away from the door. I'll bind him with my Kagemain no Jutsu, Shikamaru said between breaths. If things get hairy, I'm counting on you to kick his ass, all right? Got it. They skidded to a halt at the door to Lee's room and Shikamaru stood in front of it with Naruto to the side. Shikamaru took a breath, turned until his back faced the door, then nodded. Naruto pushed the door open as silently as he could as Shikamaru swept through hand seals. Naruto barely got his hand out of the way as Shikamaru's shadow took on a life of its own and rushed into the room and out of his line of sight. A moment later, Shikamaru grunted and let his hands drop. Kagemain no Jutsu, success. Naruto took that as his cue and tore into the room, decking Gaara as hard as he could. Gaara slid backwards across the floor, but he hadn't even been lifted off the tiles, despite the strength put behind Naruto's fist. As his head rose to look at them, Naruto saw small pieces of his sand armor flaking off of his cheek. Shikamaru, who had turned around, and forced Gaara to turn as well, it seemed, rubbed his cheek tenderly. Oh. Damn it, Naruto, I feel what he feels, remember? What are you doing? Naruto demanded angrily, ignoring Shikamaru. To release so much killing intent, Shikamaru frowned seriously and dropped into the most solemn expression Naruto had ever seen on him. Why are you trying to kill Lee-san? Do you have some kind of grudge? No, Gaara said in his deep monotone. I do not. It's not something that complicated. I'm going to kill him just because I want to. Oh yeah? Said Shikamaru, but even Naruto could tell that the confidence in his voice was fake. Well, we're not going to let you do that. I mean, hey, you're strong, but we were holding back in the prelims, too. Right now, 2 against 1, you don't stand a chance. You get in my way and you are dead, Gaara said calmly. There was no hesitation. He'd said it as calmly as one might declare that the sky was blue. I'd like to see you try. Naruto shouted, grasping the azure-clothed hilt of his sword. Naruto, Shikamaru hissed at him. Shut up. This guy's a monster. So? Naruto said. His grin was confident, but mirthless and bitter. I've got a real monster in me. This guy is nothing. A real monster, you say? Gaara's attention was now focused entirely on Naruto. Then I am the same. I came into this world by taking the life of the woman I would have called my mother. My father created me in order to be Suna's ultimate weapon, and bound the spirit of the Ichibi no Shukaku, the demon sealed in a tea kettle, inside me. I was born a monster. So your father sealed a demon into you before you were born, Shikamaru smiled grimly. What a twisted way to show love. Love? Gaara echoed flatly. Don't measure me by your pathetic standards. Love and family have no meaning to me. My relatives are nothing but lumps of meat connected to me by blood and hatred. He stared out at them with one of the most intense pairs of eyes Naruto had ever seen. I was spoiled and allowed to do whatever I pleased. I was taught the secrets of ninjutsu. I thought that was love. His face split into a manic grin. But starting around the time when I turned 6, my father tried countless times to assassinate me. Wait, Shikamaru said. Naruto imagined the tone of his voice was the closest Shikamaru would ever come to scratching his head in confusion. I thought you said you were spoiled? A being too strong can become an existence of fear. Gaara didn't really specify if that was his answer or if he was just continuing his story. Everyone hated me, and I found myself wondering why I went on with life. Why, then, do I exist? Why do I live? I could find no answer. But everyone needs a reason to live, or else it's the same as being dead. Naruto took a step back, staring wide-eyed at Gaara. Every word resonated inside him. It was like looking in a mirror that had been cracked. The being that looked back at him was himself, but broken and twisted and warped. And looking at Gaara, he got that same feeling. This person standing in front of him, if it had not been for Iruka, who had first shown him affection, and then Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi, who became his teammates and, eventually, his friends, he would probably have turned out just like Gaara. Finally, I came to this conclusion, Gaara said. I exist to kill everyone but myself. As long as there are people for me to kill, I will not vanish. The hell? Shikamaru interjected incredulously. Now, sand rose, gushing towards Naruto and Shikamaru. It was fast, but to Naruto, it seemed to be moving in slow motion. Let me feel alive. Naruto had already drawn Hirinmaru halfway out of his sheath, tensed and ready to fight, when the sand suddenly fell to the floor, limp and lifeless. Gaara was staring wide-eyed and open-mouthed at something just above Naruto's right shoulder, then doubled over, clenching his head and screaming the most bone-chilling, blood-curdling agonized scream Naruto had ever heard. The sand on the floor twisted and writhed in a sick sort of dance, as though it too was in pain. When the scream had finally ended, Gaara took slow, shaky steps back towards the window, panting, doubled over, and hugging himself as he trembled uncontrollably. Every step seemed to be a struggle, though he was at least standing mostly straight by the time he reached the window. He was still trembling every now and then, however, and his breaths had not quite evened out when he moved to leap from the room. Regardless, he turned before he left, his right eye shut and his breathing labored. I will kill you guys. The crowd roared in excitement, and their eagerness to see the Chunin hopefuls tear into one another was transparent. The volume in the arena was deafening and the finals hadn't even started. Several people were making bets and odds continued to change and twist. Naruto imagined a lot of people were betting against him. Many nobles from lands far and wide sat in the stands, patiently awaiting their entertainment. The Hokage sat up in his private box with the Kage from the Land of Wind, watching the entire proceedings with a neutral expression on his face. Several guards were stationed around him protectively, each standing at attention with a serious expression. Likewise, the Kage had many guards as well. The senbon between Shiranui Gunma's lips twitched incessantly as he looked over the competitors and frowned. Naruto figured he was probably sizing them all up, thinking about who would beat who or who would cause the most trouble during the fights. His eye stopped at Naruto several times, and stayed there for a minute or two at a time. He would shift a little uncomfortably. Naruto, who had started paying close attention to their new proctor when he'd realized the man was most interested in him, had yet to puzzle out Shiranui Gemna's exact reason for focusing so much on him, especially when the most interesting of the competitors was the one who was still missing. There was actually an open spot that the gathered genin had seemed to silently agree belonged to Sasuke, well, in so much that no one had moved to fill the person-wide gap in their line. Naruto wasn't sure what to make of it. Shikamaru and Temari had left a space between them big enough for one person to stand in, but maybe it wasn't for Sasuke at all. Maybe they just didn't like each other very much. Naruto didn't know, but decided it wasn't any of his business anyway. As he stood there, though, waiting a little impatiently for everything to start, he was immensely glad he had started wearing his new clothes. He missed the orange a bit, but the short-sleeved, high-collared, zippered black vest he wore now was enough to keep him warm without cooking him from the inside out. The elbow-length fishnet mesh would, he hoped, make up for the vest's rather minuscule protective properties, and with the sun beating down on him, he was glad that he'd chosen a simple mesh shirt instead of something fuller or with longer sleeves. The pants, too, lacked any orange and were completely black, a fact that he bemoaned every time he looked in the mirror. Naruto had begged Hirinmaru to let him wear orange, but Hirinmaru stood firm. He was determined to make Naruto into a proper ninja, it seemed, and had only relented on a single article of clothing. The sash that wrapped over his right shoulder, across his chest and stomach, and over his left hip was orange, and held Naruto's sword slung across his back. But more than just his clothing had changed in the past month. Naruto did not stop growing just because he was training, and his hair had grown much longer than it had been during the Forest of Death and the preliminaries. He'd considered cutting it, but every time he'd gone out to eat, he'd heard several people remarking on how incredible it was. He looked just like the fourth. So he'd kept it long and only trimmed the left side a little bit. It made his hair look uneven, but it also distinguished him from the fourth while maintaining the connection. Looking like the fourth Hokage, wearing a similar hairstyle, made him feel as though he understood the man who had sealed the Kyuubi inside him. It made him feel as though the fourth had chosen him as his successor. Sasuke still isn't here yet, Naruto thought as he stared anxiously down at the empty spot in their line. He fidgeted uneasily. What if he shows up late? I mean, Kakashi-sensei is the one training him. He raised his hand. Hey, Mr. Examiner, he called. Gunma blinked and appeared to pull himself out of a reverie, like a man pulling his soul back into his body. Yeah? Gunma grunted. The combat needle in his mouth twitched dangerously. Naruto briefly thought that he'd wind up swallowing that senbon if he wasn't careful. What happens if Sasuke's not here in time for his match? He asked. Well, Gunma's senbon twitched as he spoke, which Naruto again thought was very dangerous. If he's not here by the time his match is scheduled to begin, he'll lose by default and be disqualified. Naruto frowned and stuffed his hands in his pockets, glancing surreptitiously at the large double doors through which he had walked to reach the stadium. It was uncharacteristic of Sasuke to be so late, and there was no way he'd miss the Chunin exams. Maybe something actually had happened to him. He had no more time to dwell on it, however, for at that moment, the Hokage started to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, and the entire stadium fell into a whispered hush. Thank you for coming to Konohagakure no Soto's Chunin selection exam. At this time, we will begin the main matches with the 8 that have passed the preliminaries. Please enjoy yourselves. He stepped back and took his seat again, and the entire crowd erupted into applause and excited chatter. Gunma glanced back at the Koge stands, then turned to face them again. There are some things I need to say before the matches, he said simply. Firstly, Dosu Kanuta-san is no longer available, so he was disqualified. The last match of the first round is now Temari-san versus Noro Shikamaru-san. None of the other matches, nor the order in which they will proceed, were affected. Secondly, he continued, although the landscape is different, the same rules apply as in the preliminaries. There are no rules. The match will only end when someone dies or gives up, or when I decide that the match is over. In that case, I will stop the match, and it's over, no arguments. Understood? No one moved. Good, Gonma said, then it's time to begin the Chunin selection exam finals. The first match is Hyuga Neji-san vs Uzumaki Naruto-san. If everyone else would proceed to the stands, we can begin. There was a pause, as though they were waiting for him to say something else, and when he didn't, the other genin left. Naruto and Neji were the only ones standing in the arena. Gunma nodded, all right. He stepped up between the two boys, glancing at each of them for a few seconds. You guys are up first, so make sure to put on a good show. Naruto's hands clenched into fists. Mom, Dad, Hinata-chan, watch me. Gunma made a motion with his hand. Begin. Neji sneered at Naruto, dropping into the stance of the Hyuga's famous Juken. I'll enjoy watching you fall to pieces when you discover reality. Naruto scowled. His right hand reached up to the hilt of his sword. I'm 10 times stronger than I was during the preliminaries. The explanation Hirinmaru had given him, ironically, only after he'd completed the challenge, was still fresh in his mind. Bankai, the power that increased his strength tenfold, his secret weapon. Do not unleash it lightly, Hirinmaru had said. The difference of raw power between the initial release, your Shikai, and a Bankai is like the gap between the earth and moon. A Bankai has the power to reshape the landscape with its attacks. To use it when your friends and allies are near is to risk killing both your enemy and them. Neji's upper lip curled and the veins around his eyes bulged as the Byakugan activated. 10 times nothing is still nothing. You were fated to lose the moment I was chosen as your opponent. You say that now, Naruto said, his sword sheath dissolving as he pulled out Hirinmaru. He dashed for his enemy. Try saying it again after I've beaten you. Neji pulled out a kunai and blocked the first strike with it. The look of surprise on his face gave him away, and it was clear from the way his kunai and hand shook that he was struggling to maintain his block. Naruto felt the now familiar cool calm wash over him, and the world was brighter and clearer as his cold anger honed his focus. This guy hurt Hinata-chan, he reminded himself. The fight's just started and I already have 2 advantages, Naruto told Neji, bringing his left hand up in a seal. The first is the water vapor in the air. The second is that I've occupied one of your hands, preventing you from using jutsu. Slowly, the water in the air began to condense into several vague forms that slightly resembled senbon. They formed a sort of cage around Neji, surrounding him from all sides in a death trap. Calmly, Naruto named his technique, Sensatsu Suisho. The water needles rushed in and embedded themselves deeply in Neji's body, and Neji looked up at him for a moment, his expression clouded with pain, before he vanished with a blast of smoke. In his place was a heavily skewered log. Transparent, Hirinmaru hissed in the back of his head. Naruto twisted, bring his left arm up to block near his shoulder. A glowing palm soared past him, mere inches from his face, but Naruto didn't even flinch. The inside of Neji's elbow pressed lightly against his forearm. A smirk curled on Naruto's lips. Try again, idiot. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as 4 glowing fingers sunk into his back painfully, not enough to break the skin, but enough to feel as though they had. Foreign chakra flooded his body, threatening to shut down his kidneys. Then, with a splash of liquid, Naruto fell apart into a shallow puddle of thick water. Neji's own eyes went wide, and Naruto tallied another point for himself as he formed 10 more water clones. As they all rushed forward to flank Neji, Naruto lifted Hirinmaru into the air and spoke the command phrase, Soten Enizes, Hirinmaru. The sky above them darkened as Neji tore apart the first 3 clones with only a little effort. Naruto was a little irked when another 2 fell victim a moment later, but reminded himself as he swung down that Mizu Bunshin were only a 10th as strong as the one who made them. If Sasuke, nearly 2 months previous, could defeat 10 of Zabuza's clones, then Neji could beat 10 of Naruto's. Neji jumped to the side, dodging away from the ice dragon that soared towards him with gleaming red eyes. It twisted to follow him, but crashed into the ground and surged up to form a curved, snake-like wall of jagged ice. Little more than a month ago, Naruto would have hesitated, but he was already moving forward as Neji dismantled 3 more water clones and tossed a 4th into the last one. Then, with an unerring skill, Neji ducked under Naruto's horizontal swing, letting Hirinmaru pass harmlessly through the air above him, and shot his own hand forward to deliver what would surely have been a crippling blow. But Naruto was already behind him, and he watched as Neji's fingers passed through empty air, too far along to stop. He lashed out with his foot into Neji's lower back, making sure to pull his punches only enough that he didn't do permanent damage. As Neji went flying, tumbling along the ground to a halt at the base of the ice wall, Naruto reminded himself that his goal wasn't to kill Neji, nor to cripple him. It was to humiliate him. That was Naruto's goal. More than proving himself ready to be a Chunin, more than proving that he wasn't a loser, more than anything else right then and there, his goal was to get revenge for what Neji had done to Hinata by humiliating him in front of the Hokage and the hundreds of nobles and lords in attendance. He, a loser who had barely graduated the academy, would humiliate Hyuga Neji, a lauded prodigy and the rookie of the year of the class before Naruto's. Neji was slow to stand, and Naruto imagined he might have done more damage than he'd intended to, but despite his difficulty, Neji did stand straight and did not seem to have much trouble but for the pain. That was fine, pain was fleeting and temporary. You called me a loser, Naruto said calmly. He was already finishing a set of hand seals as he walked. You called Hinata-chan a loser. But, Neji, he stopped, both his feet and his fingers, and the wall behind Neji shuddered and shook. This loser is kicking your ass. The wall surged outwards, no longer ice, but water, and consumed Neji as it rushed to fill the arena. When it came upon Naruto, it did not sweep him off his feet, but rather surged under them, as though the spot where he was standing was the eye of a great storm. There was a roar of awe and excitement from the crowd, and though he shoved it out of the way to focus on his fight, Naruto could not help the brief swell of pride in his belly. Bakusui Shuha. Exploding water colliding wave. When the wave had calmed and stilled, it settled atop the ground, not too deep, it only reached to Naruto's ankles. Neji was huddled on all fours, choking and gasping and spitting up the water that had found its way into his lungs. Naruto waited. He could end it, right then and there, but he wouldn't. He would only finish it when Neji couldn't go on, when he was so drained and beaten that he couldn't even form a regular bunshin. As Neji stood again, Naruto swept through more hand seals. The water beneath his feet and around the stadium swirled and converged and rose as a giant pillar, forming and shaping itself into the likeness of a serpentine dragon. The dragon opened its maw in a silent roar and leapt upwards, then pounded down towards Neji. Suiryuden. Neji's face twisted into an angry scowl, a snarl that contorted his features into something grotesque and ugly. He gathered himself, hunched over, and began to spin, and around him formed a dome of brilliant white chakra that withstood the entirety of the water dragon. Naruto watched, wide-eyed, and his hands dropped to his sides. There was a roar from the crowd. Impossible! Someone shouted, and when it was all over, Neji stood at the center of a small crater, panting as the ground around him smoked. He lifted his intense white eyes to stare into Naruto's, and when he spoke, it was filled with nearly as much venom as he had used against Hinata. Kaiten! He stood straight, and then, though it took visible effort, moved back into his ready stance. This is the difference, he said, between our fates. This is the gap between our powers that you cannot hope to bridge. Someone like you, like Hinata-sama, you have no hope. You will amount to nothing, because that is your place. You will never be Hokage because destiny has decreed it so. To imagine otherwise, to encourage fruitless hopes in Hinata-sama, hopes that can never come true, is futile and arrogant. You will fail, Uzumaki Naruto, just as Hinata-sama has failed, because you are a loser, and a loser will always be a loser. Naruto's free hand clenched into a fist and his grip on his sword tightened. The cold rage in his gut erupted into a boil and he swept through more hand seals, Makyo Hyosho. Ice crystal demon mirrors. The water surged upwards again and solidified into a cage of ice mirrors around Neji, larger and thicker than Haku's had ever been. Someone in the audience, Sakura, Naruto realized absently, called his name. She must have recognized the technique, but Naruto was well aware he couldn't use it like Haku could. He swept through even more hand seals. No, he couldn't use it the way Haku had, but that didn't mean it was a useless technique. Sensatsu Hyosho, Naruto growled. The mirror shattered into thousands of pieces, and the shards compacted themselves into a cage of ice needles larger and more terrifying than the water needles in the beginning of the match. Daikemasho. As the needles rushed him, however, Neji spun again, and they were deflected. Naruto growled and swung his sword. A dragon of liquid ice leapt forward, but it too was deflected. Naruto swung again, but the second dragon had no more luck than the first. The boiling anger became molten, there was a flash of something red and vicious inside him, and he lifted his sword, ready to unleash his full power and crush his opponent. Naruto! A voice in the back of his mind called urgently. The lava-like fury simmered to a low boil. The red something vanished like so much vapor. That interruption was all he needed. He forced himself to calm. Neji's spin stopped, and he was heaving from the effort it must have taken to maintain his defense. The thrill of satisfaction in Naruto's gut only served to soothe his anger further. Hinata-chan told me all about this branch and main family stuff, he told Neji calmly. About how the branch family is branded with a seal that leaves them at the main family's beck and call. Is that why you keep going on about destiny? Because you have to walk around with a seal that marks you as different. He flung his hand to the side. Grow up. You think you're the only one who's been marked since before he could remember? You think your life is so horrible that there can't possibly be someone out there who's had it worse than you. He jabbed his finger in Neji's direction. Hinata's had to suffer every day. Constantly put down, told she's worthless, by her own damn father. Her entire family always telling her that she'll never amount to anything, that she's weak, a failure. He snarled at Neji, whose face was drawn into a tight, expressionless mask. But she's not. Just because she can't live up to you guys and your expectations doesn't mean you get to tell her she's worthless. If you Hyuga would stop being so obsessed with yourselves and your reputations, then you could see that Hinata's the best out of all of you. Why do you care so much? Neji asked evenly. What difference does it make to you? Because, Naruto said lowly. His voice trembled with emotion and solemnity. I've been called a failure all my life. Naruto vanished and the crowd gasped as a whole. He had barely gone before he was standing behind Neji, facing away. A long, silvery chain went from the pommel of his sword to Neji's hands and bound his wrists tightly. A second chain, phantasmal and blue, wrapped around Neji's arms and bound them to his sides. It started at Naruto's back and seemed to come from inside his body. Neji, Naruto declared quietly, it's over. Neji wriggled a little and tried to spin, but Naruto tightened the hold his chains had and didn't let him. Still, Neji struggled, but even Naruto could tell that he didn't have the necessary strength to seriously attempt freeing himself. There was a resigned sigh. Mr. Examiner, Neji called. I must forfeit. Winner, Gunma called. The chains binding Neji loosened, and Naruto dispelled both the single chakra chain and his Shikai, Uzumaki Naruto. The arena was silent for a moment, as though the spectators had trouble believing the outcome of the spectacular battle. Naruto turned to see them all staring at him and shifted uncomfortably under their gaze, waiting hesitantly for their reaction. Then, he heard a noise he hadn't thought he'd hear from a crowd of Konoha villagers and shinobi. It started out low and soft, as though the crowd didn't know how to react to his victory, then it grew. It grew louder and louder as more people joined in, some standing to make themselves known. The cheer rose in volume steadily, growing and growing until it became a deafening roar. People were getting to their feet and screaming his name. They cheered for him. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and gave them the biggest, goofiest grin he'd ever worn. His eye searched the crowd, looking at each and every person calling out excitedly, until he found one particular person that made his heart soar. There, in the crowd, sitting next to her teammate Kiba, was Hyuga Hinata. It was difficult to see from the distance, but as she clasped her hands in front of her he could just make out the smile gracing her lips. That made it all worth it. The other finals matches were not nearly as exciting as Naruto's had been. In fact, of the other 3 matches, only one was actually happening. Sasuke was missing in action, so his match with Gaara had been postponed. Naruto had crossed his arms and grunted a complaint that anyone else would have been disqualified, and Kankuro hadn't even entered the arena before forfeiting, so Shino's match had been over before it had even begun. Of the first round of matches, which, quite naturally, had to be completed in their entirety before the second round could start, that only left Shikamaru's match. But Shikamaru was Shikamaru, and he was notoriously lazy. What had started out quick and dirty had, after the first few minutes, turned into a long and tedious battle between strategists. A lot of people seemed bored, and some had taken the opportunity to make a quick stop at the restroom or buy some more refreshments while Shikamaru and Temari had a staring contest and tried to outthink each other. Naruto used the lull in Shikamaru's battle to pay a visit to his favorite spectator. Gunma might have told him he should stay with the other competitors, but Shikamaru's battle had been going on forever. And they were just standing there, doing nothing. There was no way he was going to watch them if that was all they were doing. Oi, Hinata-chan! He called, waving as he walked down the steps 2 at a time. She jumped a foot in the air out of her seat, and when she turned to look at him, a single delicate hand was pressed against her chest, as though to calm her heart. En Naruto-kun, she smiled a small, unsure smile. He frowned. He'd have to work on that. A girl like her shouldn't have to feel insecure about smiling. Congratulations. Naruto felt his mouth pull into a large grin. Thanks. I really beat that Neji jerk, didn't I? Taught him about picking on a girl. One dainty hand lifted to hide Hinata's mouth, and he had the sneaking suspicion she was trying not to laugh. A thought came to him. I have an idea. Hey, Hinata-chan, let's go to Ichiraku's to celebrate. Hinata did a double take, and as she looked at him with something akin to nervous surprise, her cheeks blossomed with pink. And now? She asked incredulously. No, not now, silly, he said. I mean, after. You know, after the finals are over and done with. We can go and have some ramen at Ichiraku's. I'll even pay. Iruka, Naruto thought, would have had a heart attack if he'd heard that. Naruto never offered to pay for ramen, never ever. Hinata glanced down and to the side, as though listening to a voice only she could hear, then looked back up at him and smiled, though her cheeks were still tinged red. ID like that, Naruto-kun. The entire crowd suddenly fell silent. There were only a few quiet murmurings amongst them. Naruto blinked, then turned to look back into the arena and stopped cold. Something akin to surprise bloomed in his belly. Shikamaru actually had his opponent trapped. Shikamaru was actually going to win. Naruto found himself at the railing before he knew what was happening and watched with unblinking eyes, waiting for the finish. Shikamaru raised his hand, opened his mouth, and then said, I forfeit. The entire crowd was suddenly silent. It seemed as though they had all forgotten to breathe. They were all staring, like Naruto, down into the arena and asking themselves what had just happened. At least, Naruto was, anyway. He couldn't speak for the rest of the crowd, but he was staring down into the arena and wondering if maybe his hearing was going, or his imagination was getting the better of him. There was no other way, he reasoned, no way he would have ever heard what he had. Shikamaru shrugged, as if to say, oh well, or it doesn't matter to me. He had the usual bored look on his face, not the intense focus that had been there moments before or the searing solemnity he had shown when confronting Gaara in Lee's hospital room. He looked like he was ready to lie down and take a nap. Naruto could hardly believe it. Who? Gunma asked incredulously. His senbon threatened to fall from his loose lips. He looked as if he'd been told that the Tsukikijiri Wagakyu wore pink underwear decorated with pretty red hearts. What? Temari stuttered. Her eyes wide and her mouth had dropped open in shock. What did you say? That's right. You heard me, Shikamaru said lazily. I quit. It was fun and all, but this wouldn't last much longer, anyway. I'm almost out of chakra. In fact, I think I've got enough to hold this for another 10 seconds, tops. What? Temari asked, dumbfounded. You mean that, after all that talk about not losing to a girl, and after all the trouble you gave me, you're forfeiting? Throwing in the towel? Must I repeat myself? Shikamaru retorted rudely. His shadow suddenly retracted, retreating from her as though she had some contagious disease. There, you happy? I couldn't fight back even if I wanted to. You win. Gunma started slowly, as if the words refused to leave his lips. His eyes were still wide as he continued, Winner Temari. The words had no sooner left his mouth than a sudden whirlwind exploded in the middle of the arena, kicking up dust and sending leaves dancing. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it vanished, and at its place stood two figures back to back. The first person was tall, nearly twice as much so as his shorter companion. He wore navy blue under a green flak jacket and a mask to hide his face from the nose down. A Konoha Hittite was slung over his left eye like an eye patch. His gravity-defying silvery grey hair spiked up like the bristles on a broom. His hands were nestled in his pockets. The second person was a boy easily half the older one's age, no more than 13 or 14 at best. His bangs were long and parted to frame his face and reached easily to the very edge of his jawbone. His dark eyes flickered about the stadium as a small smirk quirked at the right side of his lips. His raven black hair spiked backwards at the back of his head, kind of like the hind end of a chicken. Naruto smirked, cupping his mouth with one hand as he leaned against the steel railing. Hey, Sasuke! The younger of the two figures looked up. His expression remained mostly neutral as Naruto continued, What's the sword for, compensation? I don't know, Naruto, Sasuke called back. The smirk on his lips stretched wider as he lightly fingered the hilt of the ninjato strapped horizontally to the back of his waist. What's yours for? Naruto grinned broadly and fingered the azure hilt of his sword, hoping that Sasuke got the message. When Sasuke beat Gaara and it was their turn to fight, they would be matching more than just jutsu. When they fought, it would be a battle between swordsmen. I'm sorry, Kakashi addressed the examiner, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. We got kind of sidetracked. He's not disqualified, is he? No, Gunma smirked. You guys were really late, but we pushed his match back to last. As a matter of fact, we should probably be starting by now. Oh, right. Kakashi said, vanishing in a puff of smoke, only to reappear in the stands. Temari and Shikamaru followed his lead, heading back upstairs as Gaara appeared from the stairwell and walked calmly towards his opponent. Don't lose to this guy, Sasuke, Naruto muttered as Gunma stood between the two genin. Since Acha-san wasn't here earlier, I'll go over the rules again very quickly, Gunma said. There are no rules regarding what you can or can't do. The match is only over when one of you gives up, is rendered unable to continue, or dies. If I conclude that the match is finished, then it is, and if you still try to continue, I will move to stop it. Understood? Gaara grunted and Sasuke gave a quick, jerky nod. Now finally, begin! Sand burst from Gaara's good and Sasuke leapt back and away. His body was visibly tense, and it could be seen from his posture that he was cautious. Good, Naruto thought. He shouldn't be taking Gaara lightly. Another Biju container would have a great deal more raw power than an ordinary genin. Then the sand seemed to flinch, writhing as if in agony. Naruto remembered distinctly those moments in Lee's hospital room and wondered, was Sasuke's sword like his? But it couldn't be, he thought. Reinmaru had not roused in the back of his mind the way he had with Hinata's Tobium. So then what was going on with Gaara? Gaara grunted and grasped his head, muttering to himself. Don't be so angry, Kar-san. That blood I gave you earlier, it was disgusting. But I promise. This blood will be so much better. Naruto gripped the railing nervously. Something inside his chest clenched, and he was all too well aware, as he had been that day in the hospital, that it could have been him. If it hadn't been for Iruka and the Hokage, the two people who had extended a hand of love and acceptance to him, he would have been the same. He would have become a monster. Gaara flinched, cringing, and the sand fell lifelessly to the ground. He took in a few deep breaths, then stood straight as his face smoothed out into its normal calm facade and Gaara's empty teal eyes glared at Sasuke from rings of black. His brow furrowed as his lips drew tight and his arms folded in his typical fashion. The sand was calm, floating around him smoothly. Come, Gaara uttered in a low, dangerous voice. Naruto-kun, a voice said as a hand came to rest on his shoulder. The spell that had bound his eyes to the match was broken as Naruto jumped nearly a foot in the air and turned his head to look at Kakashi, who stood just slightly behind him. Geez, Kakashi-sensei, he said quietly, willing his heart to calm down. Don't sneak up on me like that. Sorry, Kakashi said, smiling. A moment later, he was serious and leaned down as though to share a secret. Listen. The Hokage and several other very important people were asking about Reinmaru. Naruto swallowed nervously as a cold block of dread plunged into his stomach. His mouth was suddenly dry. I told them that I gave it to you. The relief that flooded him must have shown on his face because Kakashi gave him a quick smile before he continued, if anyone asks, Naruto-kun, Reinmaru is an heirloom from your mother, passed down through the Uzumaki clan for generations. It's the last remnant of your family from before Uchiha was wiped out. I understand, Naruto said. He paused a moment. Kakashi-sensei, does that mean that I'm the only Uzumaki left? That I know of, Kakashi said solemnly. It's impossible to say for sure, but you are the only Uzumaki left in Konoha, and Uchiha is nothing but ruins now, so. I see, Naruto said in a low, trembling voice. He'd always suspected, but it was another thing entirely to have it confirmed. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi didn't say anything. He just gave Naruto's shoulder a squeeze and walked away. Naruto swallowed thickly, then turned back around to watch the fight. Down in the arena, Sasuke dashed towards his opponent, kicking up a trail of dust as he moved. He flung two shuriken, and the sand rose up and grabbed them out of the air. It morphed into a copy of Gaara, glaring at him with the two shuriken grasped in its fingers. It exploded outwards and Sasuke leapt up, tossing two more as the Gaara clone tried to use his previous ones against him. They met halfway and clattered uselessly to the ground. Sasuke landed and punched a hole through the doppelganger, the sand was blasted apart, then surged inwards and grasped at his wrist. He brought his other hand up in a palm strike, blasting the sand clone's head to bits. He rushed forwards again, aiming a punch at Gaara's face. The sand rose to block, but Sasuke vanished, reappearing behind Gaara. Before Gaara could turn to stop him, Sasuke landed a solid punch on his left cheek, sending him flying. The sand formed a cushion for Gaara, standing him back up as it repaired the damaged section of Suna no Yoroi. Gaara's glare seemed to intensify. "That speed," Gai remarked in surprise. He turned to his eternal rival, "Kakashi, you?"